Look, solo in this coupe with the ceiling off. Try to trail me home, I knock your ceiling off. Dirty money thumbing, hunters keep on peeling off. Falling out of love, I had to go and cut my feelings off. Dulling my emotions, I was so consumed. I use this paper as a bandage for my open wounds. Blanca Lotto got me tripping like a dose of shrooms. I know the nationwide dealers and the local goons. Allegedly, my pedigree is what you never be. Intelligent like German Shepherd breed, fight to the death of me. American bully.
Yeah, we were talking about Project Doorway, actually. That's how one of the Shanes and I actually came together was over Project Doorway. We just, we love the way that you, like, the approach you take about that. Like, you're actually measuring things like an apported mug. It's like, this is stuff, like tangible stuff, I think people should be talking about.
Well, yeah, there's not many people doing that sort of work, really, to be honest. I mean, though I'm in a number of think tanks, one of the high ones is in the US, which is the Scientific Coalition of UAP Studies. I'm actually part of that organisation, along with Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis and a few other people that you might recognise their names, seem to be associated at the top levels of UAP studies. And I got invited to the think tank after sending them the first document on Project Doorway. And once they read the information, I got an invite to the think tank. So I thought, well, okay, we're doing something right. The thing is that, the biggest questions we've had, because, I've been in this subject now for 40 years, and, if I get another photograph and another video is not helping us guys, really. It's not, though they are really fascinating and they're really interesting, but it's not giving us any answers. It's not giving us any closer to what the hell's going on. And we decided to come together, myself and Barry, to conduct a scientific study. The reason for this scientific study is to cause or create a new scientific reassessment of the UFO phenomenon, because really has not one been done since the sort of 70s, and now we know that it's intrinsically associated with the paranormal and supernatural. A whole new reassessment is required. But then we realised that might have actually been done on purpose. There might have been purpose compartmentalisation years ago. So we don't figure it out. So we don't start asking these questions, because there was a ruse. And that ruse is to keep your eyes on the skies and think interstellar travel and visitors from other worlds. The problem is that this phenomenon has always been here. We might be the new kids on the block. And if that is the case, then this phenomenon is right under our noses and can manifest at will whenever they want. And that is more likely to be what the phenomenon is representing now, as we clearly identify it, than what we thought it was. So if that is the case, then we need to look at other areas of research, the metaphysical, the paranormal, the supernatural. And what we realized is that this phenomena has been going on for multiple thousands of years. The same sorts of things keep happening over and over, but the mask is continually changing. And I, just like Barry, don't believe we're ever seeing the true, whoever these things are, what they are. Because, we have the trinsic alien greys now, which seem to be the most popular things. But there's over 2,000 different types of entities reported. I can't imagine for 1 second there's 2,000 planets out there and they're all traveling from all these different planets. Sounds too much like a Star Trek episode to me. From what we know is that the phenomena presents itself in different ways, has different agendas, but it's far from what we think it might be. Well, that's the big problem, because I don't think the people at the hierarchy end of research really want to get into that and really start trying to explain that, because it's so profound and it's so problematic. We like to keep it simple, that ETs might be traveling to Earth and conducting certain agendas. That's easier to digest than it is that the phenomena is multiple dimensional and can react with us at any time by jumping in and out of our realities. It can manipulate our senses. It can be deceptive in regarding how they appear. And really, we haven't got anything we can do about it. I mean, that's not what they want to tell us. Nobody's going to come out and say that. But the bottom line is, there's more evidence for that than there ever was for extraterrestrial intelligence visiting Earth.
Yeah, Steve. Hi, this is UFO Shane. I was brought down. I'm a massive fan of you and Barry's work. Barry's always talking about it in like a way, I guess, of fairy folk and stuff like that, how it's all the same thing. He talks about the iron around the churches and things like that. And he talks about the theta waves and the fight or flight. Can you go into a little bit about that, if possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we always put warnings out. I mean, anybody can go on Sky Watches and that sort of thing. And I say, great, if you want to see something, fair enough. That's the sort of thing what people do. But what people tend to do when they go out on Sky Watches is that they take a lot of hot drinks and things to eat with them. And they're usually munching on candy bars or drinking Coca-Cola and things like that. Now, the problem is there's so much refined sugar in these items, which we've all got used to nowadays. And what's happening is that it causes adrenal weakness. Refined sugar causes adrenal weakness. So your fight or flight's not going to work. So when people are having bad experiences, it's simply because the body's not warning them to take the opposite direction rather than going ahead with the encounter. For us, myself and Barry, we tend to starve ourselves of any refined sugar before going out on investigations. It's so surprising how the body reacts and tells you. Now, we've all had this occasionally. Even paranormal investigators, when the goosebumps go up on your arms, when the hair rises on the back of your neck, that is the same thing. It's your survival sense. It's your body, which is the biggest organism, is your skin. And your skin's so clever, it's telling us things. That survival sense is still within us all. And though it's trying to tell us, though we might not see something or hear something, the body knows there's something there. And it's telling you, it's warning you, to get the hell out of Dodge. If it doesn't like it, it will tell you. You do get responses like that when you're supposed to back off. Because of adrenal weakness, people aren't doing that. And when we go out on certain locations and investigations, it's true, sometimes we might experience certain phenomena, but it's interactive and it's very clever. And it also knows is that when we're actually conducting certain types of research, it knows how to put obstacles in the way. We know that they can hear us, they can see us, they know what we're doing. They're always one step ahead, these guys. But the problem is trying to beat them at their own game. It's not easy. But when you start going down that road, you start to realize that what actually they're doing, and they are fundamentally manipulating us, not just with infrasonic sounds, but in regards how we perceive and cognate those experiences. And that falls hand in hand with the earlier paranormal experiments that first introduced ETs. I mean, first time ETs were introduced was around the seance table. That was where they first derived, and that is where they lie. That's it's still going on today. There are still experiments in that field where, communication can take place. People sitting around, 5 people, 5 mediums, sat around a table doing a seance and communicating with things which are saying that they are ET or interdimensional beings is no different than having 5 meditators on a C5 expedition. Like Stephen Gray does. The same format, but it's just done in a different location and a slightly different style, but it's the same results. You can interact with the phenomena.
Yeah, and Steve, I think what you're referring to, I don't remember the name of the project. I know Barry talks about it, where they basically do a Ouija board, but it summons a gray alien, right?
That was the skull experiment. Yeah, I mean, I've been part of some of the further experiments, which we classed it. The program was called Phenomena Project at that time, which was that study. And it's about communication. Now, we've established that, yes, we can gain communication. We can't establish what we're gaining communication with, because the biggest problem we have is the deception. And when we got to a point where we could get regular communication and answers, sometimes straight out the air, usually always above us for some reason, that we were asked to say, look, we can ask 10 questions. And that was really interesting, because when we come to formulate the 10 questions, just prior to asking them, we were given the responses, 10 responses, which were the answers to the questions before we'd even give them. So we know that they actually even can hit, they know what we're thinking. They know that what exactly. There's no way around the deceptive area. Because the problem is, when people sit down and do seances and they think they're talking to the great auntie who passed away 3 weeks ago, well, the problem is that the phenomena can obtain that information from us and feed it back to us. In other words, draw us in. And what happens is the phenomena has a habit of being able to draw us in slowly but surely, and we end up getting more interested. We end up doing more familiar work on a more regular basis, and what happens, it gets under your skin. And that's what this phenomena wants. And when it does that, that means that it can track you, it can follow you home, it can cause disturbances. You take your work home with you. Myself and Barry have done that many, many times. We're always doing it. And it is problematic, but we have to kind of take forward steps in the research. But sometimes, we have to have a cooling off period, because things just do get too irate sometimes.
Thank you, Steve. Go ahead, Holly.
Hi, Steve. It's Holly Hollywood. I know we've spoken a couple of times. It's so great to hear an English voice in a very American space. So hi. I hope you're okay, love. It was one from me when the lad said that you were dropping into the space, and it was a question that's been on the tip of my tongue for some time. When we last caught up at your wonderful event, you touched on the whole the locations where you've done a lot of your research and investigations about the positive magnetic fields, and how that potentially could be a portal or a doorway, and we don't fully understand what that is. And I just wonder if you could expand a little bit more on what these, the locations that you've been at having these positive magnetic readings and stuff, because for me it's fascinating, because we see it a lot when we do dowsing and different things like that, but I know you've just got a better take on it, so I'll be quiet.
All right, thanks. Yeah. Well, if you listen to my lectures, you probably know I very rarely use the word stargates, portals, doorways, because I just don't think, they're the right words. But the bottom line is that the professional name for them is an electron diffusion region. That's what NASA like to call them. NASA have confirmed that they exist. And these locations, when you mention about positive magnetic regions, what myself and Barry do, we utilize two or three different satellites in orbit for, it's mapping services such as gravitational anomalies and magnetic anomalies. And what we do is we check in association with registered or recorded or reported phenomena. And what we found is, when we first stumbled across this, is that when we are looking at positive magnetic regions over 200 nanotesla, we are in a location where there's a huge heightened amount of phenomena taking place. Now, that phenomena is represented by cryptid sightings and incidents, from paranormal hauntings and poltergeists to UFO encounters and abductions. Now, they're all in that pot, should we say. And we know reasons why. Well, I'll get to that a little bit later. But we realized that we can map the planet, and we can put these notes down and say, okay, for sure, this location is a highly positive location. What we did is we had to put this to the test. We found over 2,000 examples of positive magnetic regions in association to very well-known documented cases in those areas. We still had to put it to the test. So we decided to go to a new location. It was a positive magnetic region up in the mountains in the desert of Palm Springs, in that direction. And myself and Barry and a team went up there to conduct an experiment, and we were bang on, because the phenomenon presented itself to us. And be honest with you, what the phenomena can do, it can glamour It can put on such a beautiful light display. Arcus, it's like an Arcus welding lights, the beautiful colors, and it almost kind of in a hypnotic state. But after 20 seconds, what's happening after around about 20, 30 seconds, what your brain starts to change into theta wave, and you kind of enter into more of a dazed state watching this thing rather than doing what you would normally be doing. Happens many occasions when people have said, damn it, I should have took a photo, and it was round, you know, I held the camera, but I don't know why I didn't take a photo. And this is the same sort of thing. But we realized after watching this for about a minute or two, which were very large and very close, that you are unaware, because it's the magician's hand, of what's going on behind you. And we quickly realized through Barry's interpretation of what was going on at the time, that they were already on the ground behind us, these things. And we had to hot tail it out of there. There was about 6 of us. And we did hot tail it out of there because, you know, the fight or flight was kicking in, and we knew something wasn't right. And it just didn't feel right under the circumstances. But it proved that particular area, which we'd pre-mapped already and when traveled to that location, proved to actually work out to be the example that we'd actually marked down on paper beforehand, that this was another association between location and phenomena. These are scattered all over the world, and myself and Barry have traveled all over the different countries, and we've been in those locations. Barry's photographed them, I've photographed them. We've seen so many weird and crazy stuff. It's hard to imagine, really, but it once it gets under the skin, though, because you get so associated with this phenomena on a regular basis, it becomes part of your life. And once that happens, that door never really truly shuts. It stays open a little bit, and phenomena creeps in and out occasionally, so it can be disruptive, not just for Barry and his family, but also me on occasion.
That is so fascinating. I've heard you and Barry talk about that story tons of times. I know Barry tells another one where he's at home, and it's like 1:30 in the morning with his dog, and it happened to him then too. Once again, guys, like, if y'all haven't checked out Steve, I feel like everybody in here we've been preaching since we've been blue in the face, Steve, about your work. And thanks again for joining us, man. Let's go ahead and get to that. Oh, I'm literally glowing right now. Let's go ahead and get with Mike Krenish. What you got, man?
Hey there. Yeah, I just wanted to ask Steve about the phenomena has basically shown deliberate deception. It's presenting itself to us in a certain way. It's taking a lot of time and energy to do this when it could probably accomplish whatever it needed to accomplish by other means, without us even knowing it existed. So does this suggest that the phenomenon needs us for a specific thing? Does this suggest a scarcity on the phenomenon's part? And part of the deception is that it doesn't want us to know that it needs us. Or is that part of the feature?
That's a really good question. I actually believe it's part of the feature. I mean, I think the deception goes back. I mean, if we actually look on records, and we've done statistics and surveys, and we've done research, and I think Barry's gone as far back as 7,000 BC in Botswana, which was the very first references to these entities. But then, we were referring to serpent beings back then, and of course that went on for a long, long time. The recognition of the serpent gods and those sort of things. Now, they created ways for communicating and manipulation, and people at that time obviously thought it was a good thing. They were gods, and they were going to direct them in the right place and communicate with them, tell them how to advance and look out for them, those sort of things. So they became the deities. And the problem is that they've changed the face as thousands of years have passed. The Egypt, it's no different for the Egyptians. It just have different names. The same place associated is the underworld. In other words, it's a very terrestrial phenomenon. But the phenomenon itself has more association geophysically and geologically than the skies have ever been associated with this phenomenon. People aren't pointing in the right direction. And this is why we have UFOs going into the grounds and into volcano and into hills. And, we see that on a regular basis. We know that they're associated geophysically and geologically. And that goes back thousands and thousands of years. Now, our ancestors knew that. They built certain locations to be able to communicate them at certain times of the year. And they were communicating with these deities or gods or whatever you would really want to pose themselves to be. At some stage, though, it didn't go well because a number of thousands of years ago, quite a number of ancient civilizations around the world started to destroy their own temples associated to contact with some of these beings. So I don't know if something went well. It seems that there was a very strong element of blood worship, which was demanded by the gods. Now, all you got to do is pick up the Old Testament Bible to see that, even the Catholic, the God that we know, has demanded blood sacrifice on numerous times. I mean, he had bad days sometimes, God, and he wasn't a very nice guy sometimes, if you read the Testament. And it's the same trend. It's these same deities and the same thing. And of course, what we tend to find is that it's changed its mask, but there's still the interactions have just taken place in the same way over the years, but it's just presenting itself in a different way. And if you look back from, say, if you want to talk from the 1940s, we're talking the grey aliens, the presenters, they present themselves as grey aliens. And when they say they present themselves, they are physiological constructs. These are real physical things. It's not like you can grab one and take a mask off. They do present themselves in a physiological construct. The problem is that physiological construct is a construct. It can appear to be whatever it wants to appear to be. And this is where the deception comes in. And I believe, the question you were asking is that I believe it's part and parcel of this phenomena, that it's so deceptive that I don't think we've really ever really seen them for what they are, or could we even understand them for what they are. So what they do is they create a construct. Now, the biggest construct now is the idealism of extraterrestrial life, strange beings that might live in outer space, so therefore they are. We have plenty. We have over hundreds of cases where, contact and abduction cases where they just say, that they're not what they seem to be. The craft that landed, they didn't look large enough for them to get in. And why has it got portholes and rivets around it? It looks like something straight out of the 1930s, and there's just things that just don't add up, because the whole perception of what we are seeing, their crafts and the entities, can be completely confusing, because it's total manipulation. Now, that's gone on for, as far as I'm aware, it's been going on for thousands of years. It's been still happening even today. We still get regular cases where people have even reported that they've changed shape, or they've manipulated how they seem to be viewed, screen memory, as you might say. We've seen the same phenomena in numerous different ways, myself and Bowie. And we know there's a strong paranormal connection with them. I'll give you just one typical scenario. There was one particular evening when I was sat in my house, and around about 5 o'clock, I just had the urge, like sometimes I do, a sudden urge to just go out to the garden and look up. And I did. And like many times when I do that, there's usually something there. And I went out and I looked up, and yes, there was a craft there, and it was stationary. And it sat there. I took photos of it, and then it sat there for about 10 minutes. In fact, I got bored and went in. And a lot of people giggle at that because they think, what the hell do you? And I don't know why. I just kind of did. But that evening, around about 2 o'clock in the morning, should we say, something crawled into bed with me. and I couldn't get the damn thing off me. I fought with this thing for about a good 2 minutes, struggling and to get it to kick it off me. And that was it. You know, I was up for the rest of the night. So my first point of call in the morning was to ring Barry. So I contacted Barry around about 10 o'clock the following morning and said, just to say to Barry, you know what had happened that night. And before I could even get my words out, he said, what a bloody night I've had. He said, something came through the house last night. It ripped the light fittings out of the wall. The wife was absolutely petrified. You know, all hell broke loose here last night. And it turned out, you know, it was happening to him as it was happening to me. The only coincidental thing is that we'd both been working on Sumerian demonology 2 days before. And to tie in with our work, it was a very heavy research program. And we were looking, because they're described as dogmen, you see, the Sumerian demonological demons. So, and we were doing a lot of work on that. And we had to cool down for a little bit because we just get plagued sometimes. And and you think to yourself, well, why would the paranormal be associated with a UFO? If the UFO is extraterrestrial and it's coming from some other planet, why is it tying so well with the paranormal? And we have this so many times. And now we've got the evidence. Now we have the evidence of the analysis of apports, which show particular type of diathermic reaction. Enough diathermic reaction to even fool the computer program to think it's not even the thing that disappeared. It's a mimic of some sort. And that may be because of quantum anchoring, what we call quantum anchoring, when the phenomena leaves something in the environment and it knows where to trace phenomena back to. So it sends phenomena to that location because it's left something behind. That apport is that quantum anchor. We remove them sometimes, and the phenomena tracks the items, the location of the items, rather than the location of where it manifested, sometimes causing a very unusual suppression of the phenomena. And so we know there's a direct connection there. And we also found exactly the same diathermic reaction in documents, scientific documents, which are classed as, well, they're called the biological traumatology tests carried out on plants where UFO is manifested close to the ground and affected the plant growth. When analyzing those plants scientifically, it showed the very same diathermic reaction. So we can say then that the likelihood is that the sudden manifestation of UFO close to ground and the sudden manifestation of an apport in a house are utilizing the same physics here. But what physics are they? They're not the physics that we currently understand and know. So we have to open up a whole new world into research, into metaphysical phenomena and alternate reality. And that starts getting very heavy into the quantum mechanics. So you can see that, you know, we're just by the trend of work, it's pushing us in those directions.
Steve, you're like the Merlin of the paranormal to me right now, man. You just blew my freaking absolute mind. And yeah, it was the story I was referring to was you actually, Steve, not Barry. I watched where you recounted that exact story you just said, and it was crazy hearing it then, and it's even crazier hearing it now. Let's go ahead and get to Rob, and then Tiff, and then Logan.
Oh, damn! I didn't forget why I had my hand up. Oh no, I do remember. Go ahead though. Let me regather my thoughts, and I'll let Tiff and Logan go, and then I'll come back around. Let me jot it down real quick. Sorry, I got sidetracked.
You're good, Rob.
Big fan, by the way, Steven.
Hi, Ben.
Go ahead, Tiff.
Hi, Ms. Mera. Thank you so much for joining us today. The things that you're saying are really awesome. I love hearing them. I study independently the phenomena, and so a lot of things that you're saying kind of resonate with me with things I've put together. It sounds more like you feel like the phenomena is like a trickster or something like that. I imagine that when we're talking in past and history about the demons or religious encounters or UFOs or whatever, we're all talking about the same phenomena. It's just being viewed in different shapes. Do you think the orbs that people report are part of like the actual form of the phenomena? Possibly, because when I've interacted with them, I've gotten more of a feel like a will-o'-the-wisp rather than a star. It like it's weird. It doesn't travel distance. It's just like small and then large all of a sudden. I don't know. It's very interesting. But I wanted to know what you felt, since I think we feel the same way about the phenomena. It's all the same thing that we've been talking about all this time.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about orb phenomena, I mean, I was part of a study years ago called the Orb Project. And we wanted to prove that, the fact is that roughly around about 85% of the photography that's taken with the cameras nowadays tends to be pollen, dust particles, water vapor, those sort of things, which are very, very close to the camera lens, and they're illuminated by the infrared light. So we don't get to see them. And when we look on the photograph, it gives them kind of a 3D perspective. And it's difficult to size them. However, but there is a true orb phenomenon, and yes, they can be interactive. What people aren't telling us, excuse me, is that the world is full of all sorts of different things. We have life forms in high ionospheric areas of planet Earth. They're like worms, they twist and shape, NASA's filmed them. We are aware of these things. We don't know what they are. We believe they are some type of living organism. And even microscopic ones, there are small things all over the place. Years ago in the early 1960s, right through to the 70s, there was a considerable amount of research done into invisible flying creatures, because there are things there living in the infrared that we don't even see, which can be photographed and videoed under certain conditions. Now, the UFO phenomenon itself can mask itself in the infrared realm, because we have dual camera systems, and we've filmed a UFO in the sky on a dual camera system in the infrared. But on the normal camera, which is running side by side of this, exactly the same camera, but in a normal mode, visual mode, it's not seeing it. So they're clever. They know the limitations of the human eye, so they can completely go infrared if they wanted to. And the problem is we don't hear them, and so therefore the skies can be quite littered with these things and we wouldn't know. Sometimes they appear on radar, other times they don't. They have the ability to not only evade radar, but also to be trickster, because some of these objects have even been very cleverly pinging a 727 registration, so that the local airports are seeing it as a 727 aircraft, and it isn't. Because they realize, well, hang on a second, it's stationary. So sometimes they don't get it quite right, sometimes they do, but it's all about the deception there. There are things all around us, and occasionally, we have those encounters, and sometimes they can be interactive with these encounters. Sometimes they manifest as strange things, and people have seen ridiculous things. Myself and Barry have seen ridiculous things that shouldn't exist, and yet you just have to say, well, they're disguising themselves to be different things, whatever they want to perceive themselves to be and what they want us to see them as. But yes, you are actually right. There is that trickster phenomenon has always been part of this. And we know that, the first manifestations of these things came through from the paranormal side, through the skull experiment. We brought an apparition to life in the Philip experiment, which took place in Canada. We actually, a special team of parapsychologists got together, created a ghost. And it wasn't long before it was being experienced, that apparition, that ghost. It's a physical, real thing. We brought it into life. We brought it into meaning. It's a topra, in a sense of speaking, and it can be done. So belief is a very problematic thing here, because the phenomena knows what to utilize itself, because it picks information up from us. And if we start to think it's this, it can appear to be this. So we have to question everything. Even apparitions can do that. Poltergeist phenomena has been known to occasionally manifest into apparitions of people which passed away. There was a very famous case in the UK in the 70s of a young girl aged 14 who disappeared for 6 or 7 months. The police did a thorough investigation, and they assumed the worst had happened. And their family started seeing their 14-year-old daughter as an apparition around the house. And they realized then, that something obviously did happen to their daughter, because she's not with us anymore. But then, several weeks later, there was a knock at the door, and there she was. She'd run away with some boyfriend and that. But it was the phenomena that created that apparition, and because that's what it perceived it to be. They thought they heard knots and bangs. The stress levels in that house when that happened, when she went missing, was enough to introduce the induction of poltergeist phenomena. And the phenomena read what their interpretation would be and started manifesting as their daughter. It's exactly the same methodology in the paranormal as it is in the, if we want to refer it to the extra dimensions. Those entities, Keel called them ultra-terrestrials. There's numerous different names. But one thing is for sure, doesn't seem that they're traveling. There isn't enough evidence to say that they're ETs and they're traveling from all these other planets, because I'm sure they would have the technology, if they were, not to have to travel those vast distances, utilize key areas. And I'll tell you what those key areas will be.
Sorry about that. One definitely needed you. I apologize. But please continue what you were saying. I was really interested, especially when you were saying. Was I understanding that you were saying we manifest the phenomena, like the way it takes?
Hey, I'm sorry. I'm trying to fix. Some people got removed from the space for no reason. I'm trying to fix it where they can come back in, and it keeps muting everyone when I'm removing them from the remove list. So my apologies. Keep going.
Go ahead, Steve.
Steve, carry on.
That was super awkward.
It's space.
Hey, I can. Are you still there, Stephen? I can go ahead and ask my question if you'd like at this point. Nope, maybe not.
I think sometimes when it mutes people, it's hard to get back in.
He may not know his mic is now muted, so you have to push the button again.
Yeah, most likely.
So push the button again, so your mic, you may be talking and no one knows.
Might just need to unclick the microphone, Steve.
Yeah, I never seen.
Proficiency. Yeah. Okay.
So you want me to go ahead with my question?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So, what advice would you give to someone who's experiencing the phenomena inside their house and witnessing lights in the sky outside?
Well, that depends on how they're perceiving the phenomena. Is it problematic for them? Is it traumatic for them?
It's not, but it has created a rift with personal relationships. It seems. So
okay, so normally the first point, because I spent all these years in about over 800 different investigations of the haunting phenomena and stuff. So yeah, it's associated in that side. And people who have UFO encounters, some of them can be quite disturbing as well, especially, when it starts invading their own home and lives and things like that. The first thing is to try and make yourself as undesirable as possible. And the best way to do that is introducing iron. Now, it sounds silly, but it actually does work. The phenomena, not just the UFO phenomena, again, this is its connection, but the paranormal has an aversion to iron, raw iron. Not cast iron, raw iron. This is why, back years ago, in the medieval times, you'd find that they were banging iron nails around beds for people who were having traumatic experiences. This is why they hang the iron horseshoe above doors. Nothing to do with luck, nothing at all. It's about warding away bad spirits. Farmers in the 14th century were banging iron rods into the ground around their farms to keep their animals safe, from being taken or whatever, mutilated by the phenomena. It's there in old traditions, not just through Ireland, such as placing iron across cribs to stop the children from being abducted by the phenomena, representing themselves as gentry encounters. But it's everywhere. In the Middle East, they used hematite and things like that, which is very high properties of iron. And they used to wear it to ward away the jinn, and the phenomena was there. In India, they were using iron to ward away from problems in mutilation phenomena. That was 700 years ago. This is like mutilation film is not new. That's old as well. You know, so we don't really know. We're still doing tests on that, but we do believe it's something to do with the iron itself and the frequency, the resonant frequency of iron, somehow disrupting their process of manipulation. And we find this is why we have churches. Why do you have people don't even think? Why have we got raw iron, you know, fences all around churches and things like that, you know, and graveyards? It's to separate the realms, you know, and this old tradition goes back thousands of years, but it still works. And what I would say is that they tend to target people with low iron, so they're slightly anemic. Most of the people that have experiences which aren't very nice is usually women, and it is usually during their menstrual cycle, so they have a lot less iron in their bodies. They become targeted. And it's the same from ancient days, you know, when blood sacrifice was being done in South America by ancient tribes. They were often doing, you know, sacrificing women to the gods during the menstrual cycle. Now, they have are reluctant to iron. They just don't seem to like it. If we look at the Colares incident, which was a small island off the Brazilian coast in 1977 and 78, one of the world's biggest cases, where these things came from the sea and started firing pencil beam lights down at them. And these laser lights, which didn't grow in size or like a pencil size, had the capabilities of going through the walls, going through the roofs and hitting them whilst they were lying in bed. They would suddenly wake up in absolute agony, but they couldn't move during the process. You can imagine that, being in absolute agony and you can't move. And they could see this hitting them on the chest or their arms. It left 9 to 11 different puncture wounds. And during that process, all their iron was taken from their bodies. You know, they were being prepped for further contact, these guys, if it wasn't for the military coming in. You know, so it does have an evasion. So I would say, yes, pump up your iron, you know, iron tablets. You can get iron drinks, which are very, very good, you know, iron water. And your problem lies with most people with themselves first. Have it around the house, even wear it. I mean, I wear iron, and Barry does. We never take it off. But the only downside of this is that iron won't do nothing for you if you're underground. That's a different thing all complete. And we've learned that, myself and Barry, over the years. It will not protect you against anything from underground. Now, when I say protect you, I'm only talking about negative stuff, because there are some things which might be deemed as okay, positive. But then I've always argued the point, well, how do we measure positive and negative? Just because it doesn't do something bad doesn't mean it's a good thing. And just because it does something right, you might think it's good. It might just be agenda. So at the end of the day, you know, we have to be very careful. But I think it lies with people first. And this is what I tend to do. I introduce things to that environment. I introduce things to that individual. And sometimes, on many occasions, we have a significant change taken in the phenomena.
Yeah, I love the iron aspect, and then with Colares, I did not know about the underground thing. That just absolutely blew my mind. If you don't mind me asking real quick, why do you think it's totally different underground? Like,
well, you know, we tried looking into that. I mean, if you go back years, there's documentation to say anything on Earth, you know, is our domain. Anything below it is theirs. And it would seem that the geomagnetics, the natural geomagnetics, I mean, I know that we got the 7 Hertz thing from Earth's natural beat anyway, but somehow there's enough interference that it will not do what it needs to do underground. And you know, we can be very vulnerable. I mean, Barry's been very vulnerable on occasion underground. In fact, one of these things tried to lead him to his death. You know, so you've got to be very, very careful with some of these things.
Yeah, Steve, I think people forget that it can be rather dangerous. I mean, they found a Dansky on, not George Dansky, but the other Dansky on top of that pile of coal, you know, covered in slime. It just seems to be a weird thing. People just think it can't harm you. And I think it opened a cabinet for me. I watched a key turn, cabinet door open, toy helicopter lift in the air, Steve, and levitate 7 feet across my room, and then red balls of light manifested and disappeared. So if it can do that, it can do anything. It can do anything.
Of course. Absolutely. Of course it will. Yeah. And you always have to question why. Why do they do what they do? Because these things are very resourceful. They do things for a reason. They never do nothing for any reason. You know, they'll always do something, and there's a reason for doing it. They're very, very resourceful, just like poltergeist phenomena. It's not going to move something around, which you might think, oh, maybe I put it there. It's going to move something around so much unusual that you're going to immediately say, uh-oh, that's something strange and paranormal. This is what they do. They're how resourceful the paranormal phenomena is, just as, you know, the ufological phenomena is. We believe it's one and the same mask. I mean, there's been recent studies that have been carried out with an AI computer trying to find out what does it all mean. And after 3 years, I think it was a CRS system, it was called. It was Advanced System AI computer. 3 years they spent feeding this computer with every bit of knowledge in regarding cryptid encounters, dogmen, werewolves, and the strange things that get reported during those encounters. Poltergeist, paranormal, hauntings, you know, infestations, demonology, UFO, alien abduction, you know, in contact case, everything. And after 3 years, they were hoping the AI might remount some load of this information to suggest what's it all about, what's responsible for it. And eventually they pressed the button on it to get the conclusion. They were expecting reams of paper to come out, and it didn't. Literally a few lines just came out. But it was very interesting because the artificial intelligence looked at all phenomena from around the world, and it found so many connections between them. The result on the conclusion was it believed it was a single source that had the capabilities of physical constructs, creating physical constructs, a single source. And that's really interesting because the computer saw so many connections. I mean, you might say, okay, well, you know what, what's a Bigfoot sighting got to do with it? Lots of things, because what you don't realize is happening sometimes is the infrasonic sound. It's taking place prior to the encounter. You'll feel it when you go into these locations. They're known as dead zones. It's a bit like the term Oz factor in UFOs, where suddenly there's no sound around, there's complete quietness, it's dead. And then you'll have the experience. That's produced by the phenomena, just as it is in the UFO world. You know, we saw it in Close Encounters of the Third Kind when he was sat in his truck and all of a sudden everything goes quiet and then boom, the light hits him from above. Same phenomena. It's exactly the same thing in cryptids. You know, they're doing exactly the same thing. And how we perceive these things is through the process of fright. It's a fight or flight response, which is being triggered. And most people will say that they were terrified more so than they would ever expect to be. And that's induction of fear. That means you're being manipulated also at the time. But then you know what? You've only got 20 or 30 seconds and you can be your theta waves in your brain. You start to change and you move into a theta capacity where you are completely at their will, in the sense of speaking. You know, after 20, 30 seconds, you can be that glamoured and be in such a state that you're in this dazed form where you're not completely coherent and cognitive about the location. Even when you're in, you might find out that suddenly it seems like you don't know this location. It seems puzzling. I can't get out. And yet you've lived there all your life. You've walked that path thousands of times. You know, the phenomena has a wonderful trait of perceiving itself or demonstrating to produce itself in a way where, you know, it will scare us after death. And when people have had those encounters, when suddenly they've fallen over after this werewolf has been chasing them, and suddenly it gets to them and it's snarling and growling, well, we know what predators do, don't they? They'll go in for the kill straight away. That's what a predator does. It doesn't chase and then give up at the last minute. And these things do, because it's all about the frightening, the process. It's all about the fear. It's all about the test. You know, and what they'll do is they'll go, oh, what do I do now? Well, I can't scare them anymore because he's on the floor shaking like a leaf. I'll just run away. And this is what happens. Bigfoots have been trying to get into houses and shaking and shaking the handle furiously. And there's people inside screaming. But that's just like an old trick. It's like scaring a couple of kids, isn't it? You know, I'm going to get in and I'm making a lot of noise and I'm shaking the handle. What they didn't realise, the father who woke up upstairs, who has none of this, you know, no business in that guy, he comes down and says, what the hell's going on? Opens the front door straight away with his family behind him, screaming and shouting, saying, don't open the door. Comes face to face with this thing. And he's looking at it and it's looking at him, and all it does is just runs away because the game's over. Can't do it anymore. So the whole process there is in the cryptid phenomenon is that we know intrinsically there's a connection with a lot of these cryptid incidents in associated to UFOs and the paranormal. So it seems the computer, the AI system, can recognize all them, and it suddenly realizes that there's a connection between all these phenomena. And how can they be if we're talking it's extraterrestrial? We're talking about a phenomena that seemingly is a source, if that is correct, if the AI is correct. And if that is the case, it has the capabilities of creating these physiological constructs. And that's no different than seeing a physical apparition open a door, you know, or being scratched or touched or pushed. It's a physical interaction, physiological constructs. So then we have to really start questioning about reality and how much of reality we know and what's manipulating it on occasion, because seemingly the phenomena does manipulate it on occasion.
Wow.
This is exactly like what I was asking about. I was leading it, but it's taking too long. There's too many hands now. But basically, from what I've been gathering, is you were saying we manifest the avatars that they present to us. I'm sure that you've been studying for a long time and see that how they presented in the past. With the artificial intelligence coming through now and being so prevalent, are you concerned that the phenomena might rather interact with them rather than us? And what the implications could be?
Yeah,
Like a
absolutely. I mean,
thing.
yeah, I think the good thing about AI is that if you don't program it to have a belief system, it doesn't have a belief system. The problem for us is that everybody has a belief system. Even if somebody turns around and said, "Oh, I don't have a belief system," they do have a belief system, you know, and that can be intrusive in the conclusive information. That's why AI is good in some sense, because it doesn't have a belief system. It just looks at the data and works out what the feasible answer would be and presents it to us. And we're still scratching our heads afterwards because now we're considering what is interacting and manipulating mankind for thousands upon thousands of years, changing its mask, doing deceptive things. I mean, they've presented themselves as angels, you know, in the past. I mean, they're not always good. I mean, if you take there's a very famous painting out there of a light in the sky. It's an old painting, and it's coming down. It's hitting Mary on the forehead, and you can see the Pope in the street, and he's being whispered in his ear by an angel. Well, that angel whispered into the Pope's ear to invade Constantinople, and 360,000 people died in a week because of that whisper. You know, manipulation happens at a grand scale. Even in ancient days, when Alexander the Great was raiding and pillaging and basically trying to invade these huge fortresses and things. You know, these flying shields came out the sky and helped. They demolished 50-foot walls with light, allowing him to besiege cities. You know, there's been interaction going on and off throughout years and years, and this is why the phenomena is very, very monitored. It's always watching. They are the watchers. They watch every single thing. They know our capacities. They know our military state, every single military base on this planet, every facility, electrical, nuclear. They know exactly what's going on and where it's going on. Because it's like us, if we're going to invade another country, we first work out the infrastructure. How to collapse that country? Well, the first thing to do is to take out its power, take out its nuclear capabilities, its electrical capabilities. You know, if they wanted to first strike us, it'd be game over in literally 5 minutes because they know exactly where everything is. But the fact is that's not what they're doing. I guess that they do like to interact occasionally, cause some stir. But I'm not aware of where you might refer. If you take away all the personal experiences of the threat that the US government are saying there is. I think they want to generate a threat, and that creates a lot of defense money. And with that defense money, they can weaponize space. They've only got to get past the 1975 Space Treaty Act. And with a threat like that, yeah, you could probably get by it. So I think there's agendas all over the place, but I think there are people in certain places that do have a better knowledge. I mean, many years ago, we had some of the top guys and generals saying, when asked the questions about UFOs, the reply was, well, how much do you know about PSI phenomena? You know, these were clues years and years ago, where certain scientific teams wouldn't work on certain aspects of UFO research because they thought it was demonic in nature. You know, there's lots and lots of strange things occurring. And there are people which it does invade their lives. I mean, even Robert Bigelow, who's been involved in countless bits of research at Skinwalker Ranch and other places. In fact, Bigelow owned 3 ranches, not just Skinwalker, and did experiments at all different 3 locations because of the phenomenon was quite strife. And but he wishes that certain experiments he wasn't involved in, because this phenomenon came back and it took a straight line right through his family, and he believes that's down to his involvement in certain experiments, and this phenomenon tracked back and caused so much disruption in his life. He lost so many close members of his family that he wished he'd never been involved. And that was backed up by 3 other people that worked at the NIDS Foundation as well. It happened to them. So that, you know, sometimes there's a sting in the tail. You just got to know when to back off, because, you know, they're always one step ahead of us.
Man, I don't know about you guys. I'm sitting here this flabbergasted. Steve, you are such an absolute collection of actual real knowledge, and I'm loving it. We got so many hands up. It's going to go with Kimball, then Logan.
Yeah, Steve, thank you. This is awesome. And thanks to Screen for organizing this. I guess my question is, you've done a lot of research, and there's been a lot of data that you, I'm sure, have combed through, and it's likely still hard to really get a grasp on what this thing is. So my question is based on all your research and all the data that you've basically you know, brought forward, is there an idea or a hunch or a feeling that you have that emerges from all that data? And then the second part of that question is, do you think the definition or the model that we would use to describe the phenomena maybe hasn't even been created yet? You know, like we don't exactly have constructs or models or language to describe what it is.
That's a good question. Well, 2 good questions, actually. I think, well, just going back, let's go to the second question first. I think the biggest problem as well is terminology. Terminology through thousands of years, the misinterpretation of demonological phenomena, for an example. You know, to say that there are demons and they're represented by this and this is what they do and da 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 da. The Catholic Church has got their own, you know, and the Vatican have got their own clues on this one. But you've got to consider, you know, were we always considering the phenomena something to be wrong? I mean, wrong terminology. Just because they do certain things, well, they do lots of different things, in fact. I mean, the alien abduction phenomenon is not new. It's just changed its mass. People thousands of years ago got abducted by different things, you know, but today it's called alien abduction. Or even Bigfoot abduction now, it seems to be picking up. Or missing 411s, you know. I mean, you know, there's about 15 million people have disappeared off the planet in the most profound way you can even imagine, you know, and that's 3 times the amount of people that live in New Zealand. It's crazy. But, you know, even to certain higher levels are not even getting involved in that because it's just so profound. To the first question, I would say, well, you know, what I have learned here is the fact that we're dealing with a phenomena that's stepping through from a reality. It's right under our noses. And we already know this exists because we've got Harvard professors been screaming it out for the last 10 years, is that there are other realities right next door to ours. And, you know, it's right under our noses. Phenomena can manifest anytime it wants to in any pretty loose location, really. You know, it does what it wants to do, has its own agenda. It's not always good. In fact, not many times has it turned out to be good. You know, those people that scream love and light really haven't experienced the phenomena firsthand as much as most people have, I would have said, because the deception you start to see through. And at the end of the day, I think We're dealing with a phenomenon that presents itself in multiple thousands of different ways. It's been manipulating mankind for thousands upon thousands of years to do what it wants, to gain what it wants, to manipulate, to alter history and alter our human path, to genetically enhance us, to genetically change us. In fact, with having 18 or 19 normal Homo sapiens to having about 130 different types because of the giants that lived with us and rules out the evolutionary theory. That's why Smithsonian Institute got so many of them. They didn't know what to do with them to hide them, so started dumping them at sea. You know, the problem is that something's been manipulating mankind right from the start on a genetic level, in changing historical outcomes. All sorts of things. We're manipulated. Now, they could be the gods. It could just be the terminology of what we want to say, what we want to call them, because it all tends to be one and the same thing. You know, I mean, it's just all mixed up. But then it's even in modern day now, you know, even the Catholic Church, you know, the Pope wears a fish hat, which is Sumerian. He wears Sumerian symbolism. The Lord's Prayer is an Egyptian prayer with Amun. It's not Amen, it's Amun. It's actually a pharaoh's prayer because it would have been his kingdom. His kingdom will come, you know. So I mean, it's all mixed up, but it all falls back to Babylonian days. And those Babylonian days are the times when we were supposed to have the highest form of contact with these beings from these other realities or whatever they were, and it's so intrinsically known at high levels that they've actually indoctrinated it into symbolism, into the Masons, into religion. We do it today. We just don't know what it really means. We don't see it. It's hidden well within the subjects of religion. But I think that's what it is. I think that these are the caretakers. That you could say they could be the manipulators of the matrix of reality, that we only see and hear what we feel. Very, very limited. We're most limited creatures on the planet. We have to question, why has humans been so limited? Interesting. But that's not just by choice. I think that's been done purposely. But yes, to your questions, I say yes. I'm leaning more. I don't think there's enough evidence to say they're extraterrestrial traveling from other planets. Where's that information come from? Well, it comes from abductees and it comes from contactees. Oh yeah, they said they come from this planet. Well, where's it coming from? Well, it's coming from them. Well, should we believe them?
Yeah, Steve, I'm constantly joking in here and telling people, like, if they come down and they open the ship up and tell me to go on the ship and they take me up and show me all this stuff, when I get back to Earth, I'm not going to tell everyone that what I saw was fact, because I can't believe what the image they show. I might have never even left my house. You know what I mean? Like, you have no idea what it's showing you. It literally has the power of a god. It can do whatever it wants.
It manipulates this reality. I mean, we know that everything is atoms and things. Everything is not real, really, around us. I mean, we feel it because we're steadfast within a certain frequency, and that means that we feel the things around us. But you only got to slightest shift in frequency, and you know what? You're going to pass right through the chair, right through the table, right through the wall, right through the roof. These things can take you through walls and through roofs. They can manipulate the frequency of reality. You know, and they have been doing for a long, long, long time, you know, so, and multiple different ways all around the world with different stories and reports. Bottom line is, where do we even begin to try and understand that? Well, we don't. We are trying at the highest levels to understand, but it keeps taking us back to quantum reality. In quantum physics, it means that we have to empty the glass of physics that we know and replace it with a completely different metaphysics, in a sense of speaking. And that's hard, and it's a long process. But we do know. I mean, we punched tiny little holes into realities. They passed a mouse into it. The US government were doing that about 15 years ago, pushed a mouse into the next reality, but it never survived. The only way it got it to survive was to surround it in argon gas, you know, but that was only for a very short period of time. But what happened is that after about 3 hours, the mouse died, and they realized, why did it suddenly die? What was its conditions? And they realized these mice were dying is because they hyper-aged, the excessive aging process. Now, if you go back to the skull experiments in the 1990s in the UK, we had apports. One of those apports was a newspaper, and it was on the type of paper from the 1930s. The ink was analysed from the 1930s. This looked like it had just come straight off the press. from the 1930s, a brand new newspaper. It was sealed inside a glass box, and yet it aged 500 days per day once it came back here. Rapid aging. So do we know that obviously that whatever the other reality is, there is a distortion in time. And this is what we have been measuring, myself and Barry. We have equipment now which is known as a time displacement meters. We didn't have them years ago, but now we've got some clever tools. They're very expensive, but they're very clever, and it can measure displacement in time. So what we do is we go to locations where UFOs have been seen on a regular basis or manifesting. These are usually in positive magnetic regions, and we take a measurement and we find a distortion. Now that distortion is because of a gravitational well, because when they appear in our reality, like an apport does, or like a UFO does, when it suddenly manifests, two things in the same space and time can't exist, so something has to give. And what has to give is gravity. And it creates a small gravitational disturbance, a gravitational hole. It's a gravity well. And light waves can't escape gravity waves, so they get drawn into it. And this is why people have been driving down country roads at night and suddenly see a UFO close to the ground and the car headlights bend towards it, because light can't escape a gravitational disturbance. They are measurable, but they only last for about 72 hours. So you've got to get there, do your testing, and get out. And the problem is, it's timing and being there at the right time, because these things pop in and out of our reality. They're not traversing. Now, the astronomers, when we talked to them, they said, funny actually, they said space is unusually quiet. They're not seeing, they're seeing tiny little things, but they're not seeing thousands and thousands of traffic backwards and forwards like a super highway. If that is the case, because the amount of sightings which are seen worldwide every given day is into the thousands, we'd expect to see traffic, and there isn't. So where are they coming from? Well, they're manifesting in key locations and going off and doing their things and coming back to those locations to go back to where they've come from. Those locations are positive magnetic regions. And what else is very interesting, because it's positive magnetic regions, it's very, very low in bacterial levels there. We found that out from certain doctors using these new type of doors in hospitals, which have a magnetic seal around them. And then what happens is that it's creating a problem for the bacteria to shift across it, so they become safety wards. It's exactly the same thing. These are areas of low bacteria. So they're popping in there and they're popping out there and they're going about their business, but they're certainly not traversing backwards and forwards on the thousands like a super highway, which would have to be to planet Earth, considering the amount of sightings that are reported on a daily basis.
Wow. Wow. The thing with the map. Wow. I don't even know what to say right now, Steve. We're just blowing my mind constantly. I can sit here and listen to you talk all day. Go ahead, Logan.
Hey, Steve Mera. It's great to meet you. I love you and Barry Fitzgerald's work. Yeah, I was going to ask you if, do you think that there's any possibility that there's anything like really going on and like the phenomena is just capturing it like or copying it like as if there's like really demons or if there's really aliens out there and the phenomena sees this and it just copycats it, kind of like how it copycats like other things that we do. It kind of imitates it. And also there's this quote that Barry, I heard him say one time as it pertains to like trusting like the phenomena's intentions, whether they're, the good or bad. And he said that the true shepherd goes through the main gate instead of jumping over a fence, and a real homeowner walks through the front door instead of climbing through the window. And a man that wants to tell you the truth, even if you're from another planet, will broadcast it openly instead of whispering it into the ears of helpless captives in the middle of the night. I always thought that was a really good quote he said. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's perfect. Yeah, I know the quote well. And he's absolutely right. Yeah. Because each and every time they tiptoe around this phenomena, and it's deceptive, it creeps through in different ways. And, it's never in a way that it's always protective. It's always got something to hide. It's always deceit. When you talk about angels and demons, and, I believe they're all the same thing. They're all one of the same. Just doing different things. There's no difference. Some of the most modern, profound and traumatic abduction cases could be, if you wrote them in the 17th century, they would be assumed to be a demonic infestation of some sort and interaction. It's all kind of one of the same things. we have to really question, because like I said before, it's the problem we've given all these different names and gone with this, because it's like we've always been reaching into the dark to try and figure out what these things are. I mean, in Middle East, to just say it's all jinn, all one of the same thing, good, bad, demons, angels, they're all jinn. In other places, they'll be just classed as, well, they're all demonic. In some places, they'll be referred to as all angelic and just going about their agendas, the workers of God. But one thing is for sure, I believe they're all one of the same thing, and just appearing and utilizing, doing what they want to do for different reasons. They all have agendas in a certain way. People say, I've had some wonderful experiences. Well, I'm pleased for those people, because they haven't had a bad experience, but there's a gamble. It's always a gamble. It's no different than, four police officers arresting you for being drunkenly disorder and throwing you in the cell for the night. Is that a good experience or a bad experience? Well, they might say, well, it's a bad experience, that, but not everybody has those experiences with officers. So the officers are just agenda. They're just doing the job, and many entities might be just doing their job. Some of them like to play games. Some of them like to, time doesn't seem to bother them too much. We did surveys into what you might refer to as guardian angels and things like that. And spirits, guardian spirits. People said they had guardian spirits. So we did a proper survey into this. And out of all the people we talked to, we selected about 10, which were the most prominent experiences of having a spiritual guardian. And we asked them to really, to give us information about them. And they said, oh, yes, well, my guardian angel is called this person, and he worked there, and he did this for a living, and now he's with me, and he helps guide me. He's my spirit guide. So we did a very heavy surveys and research into these cases, and it turned out that none of them had worked in those locations. Nobody knew. The name was not known. They never worked there. They never lived there. Everything was deception. Now, that even happened to a friend of mine who was communicating with a spirit, what he referred to as Bartholomew. Exactly the same for him. He said he was working, he used to work in a university. We did the research. Never existed, this guy. This is the problem. Now, some people have had believe they've been communicating with close relatives for years. There was one guy who was 26 years. He communicated with his brother, who died at a very young age. And after 26 years, it revealed itself to be nothing of the sort. And he was absolutely distraught. But 26 years? Well, when I say, you know what, I don't think their time is the same as our time. And I think after 26 years just goes to show what great length they will go to for deception. And we had that exactly the same thing during the skull experiments. Thing is, the skull experiments had to be shut down. Bottom line is because they got infiltrated by these entities and they couldn't control the circle anymore. And so much so that they not only closed down the whole study of skull, but those things stayed with them right through their lives. And interacted with them. They couldn't get shut of them, and at certain points they believed there were hundreds of them trying to get through. They opened up a doorway they shouldn't have opened. There were warnings about it, but they carried on. There are good things, there are bad things, and the advanced skull experiments went on to show flying objects, flying UFOs, size of a dinner plate, flying around the room, shining lights down on the table. These were a very physical thing. They were watched, they were documented by numerous different people that could not fathom where these things materialized from. And it lies again in the paranormal field. Again, it's there in that side of things, very physical things. And the problem is that interactions can take place where it does leave you in a very problematic case. It did for Aleister Crowley in the early 1900s. His delving into a certain type of spiritual communications is partly Egyptian, partly Babylonian, opened up a doorway where he interacted what he thought was a spirit at first. It turned out to be something that didn't even look like human, and addressed itself as lamb and called itself an interdimensional being. And again, he kicked his ass, to be honest with you. It was the only time in his life he was ever scared, and he lost control. He lost control of this. So these things are there within the edges of our reality and can interact. But you know what? If we show too much interest, it can become problematic.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go to the hands. God, I'm sitting here blown away. Estimate, you're up, man. Thanks for waiting.
Hey, man, this is a really awesome space. Thanks to everyone for hosting it, and thank you for coming down. I do have a question about abductions in general. So you said they've changed over time, but like, has there been any follow-up to like the unwanted or missing pregnancies in the 90s? And what do you make of the fact that like when they do describe these encounters, they do describe going on these ships and being prodded almost like methodically, like like what you would expect from someone over here to do. And has there been any documentation, medically at least, for these pregnancies actually, like when these women are pregnant and then the fetus is missing? Is there any documentation for that, or anywhere like a source that we can look at, or a book, or anything you can recommend? And what have you personally seen in that regard?
Very good question. Yes, well, there is evidence of that, and then I have seen some of this information. Though it doesn't happen very regularly, but it does happen. And it was actually, there are certain, you can always tell when there's a certain agenda going on, because all of a sudden there's a certain pickup over, say, 3-6 months or 3/4 of a year, where all those sort of things are happening. And then it kind of suppresses again. It's as if suddenly there's an operation to take place, and they go about it. Those files were in the Intruders Foundation files, and Peter Robbins, if I only may know Peter Robbins as a researcher, he was heavily involved in some of those early research programs, and there were physical evidence of those fetuses being taken. Now, what they said was, without actually going through to have a physical operation to check what the process was, is that the women purposely terminated their own, and that's how they got out of it, by saying, well, the women must have purposely terminated, when that psychologically actually never happened, because there's proof in the psychological sense that no, they're actually suffering from trauma because of this incident, and they wouldn't have done such a thing. But yes, I believe that the experimentation is going on. I mean, I think what's happening is that humanity has always been altered with and upgraded. I think humanity is going through an upgrade program at the moment, and has been for quite some time. Maybe it's just a genetic, maybe it's consciousness. I don't know, but we're like a study. We're like in the petri dish, and these things, whatever they are, feel that they have the right to just alter and change things and manipulate things. And that seemingly is a process that's been going on for quite some time. I mean, if you take the alien implant phenomenon, I've got a couple myself locked away in the archives, and we have a numerous different types. Some of them, they've been very crafted because they were very easy to find initially when they first started these things happening, because they were lumpy and metallic, and they stood out in a sore thumb, under the X-ray. However, they started creating biological ones, so they wouldn't show up on the X-ray, and that they'd only get them under certain scanning. They're crafty, and some of these things will basically just break themselves down if they get taken out of the body. Some of them don't.
He said,
Oh, I think we lost him.
Oh my God, Square Spaces. I think his phone probably died
During the implants.
Or he starts talking about government implants that he has in the archives, and yep, like once again, this is a real guy that does real research, that does real things. Like, so if he tells me that he has implants in the archives, according to all far I'm concerned, there's implants in the archives. So I'm sitting here just stunned.
This guy is so freaking solid.
I think he means about the biological implants is that, like, I think the ones that Lear took out, they were made out of like certain metals and like calcium and stuff or whatever. But I think the newer ones might be like made out of like everything that's within our body, so it just kind of like comes together and forms its own thing, almost like nanobots.
I'm seeing Steve still on my screen. Are you seeing him screen?
Okay, it looks like you're getting them back up now.
Yeah. It's probably one of the most informative spaces I've been in. You guys enjoying it, I hope?
Hey, here's a fun one. I have these little particles in my shin that showed up the night that I had that wreck that I seen the green glow in the sky, and I don't know what the fuck they are. So I don't know if they're bone fragments or if there's something else.
It's a great space, Green. Thanks for organizing it, and yeah, thanks co-host Shane and Shane's.
Yeah, agreed. Great job, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
I'm just glad everybody likes it. Yeah, I'm just letting everybody, it's like, I'm glad y'all just are so interested enough to, have all these questions to ask them.
I think it just goes back to taking the time again. And we've been preaching this stuff blue in the face for months, and then you hear him talking, you go, "Oh shit, I should watch the videos." Yeah, I'm telling you. But when you hear something cool, take time to research it. You research paranormal, you'll come up with Steve Mera. He comes up on the paranormal side a lot more, but his whole belief is that they're both the same thing. He's been preaching that, and that's literally how I got started in it. We're figuring. I don't know what we're doing. Screen, have you gotten in touch with him?
Yeah, and some great questions from everyone too. Like great
Oh,
discussion.
bangers.
Yeah, this has been a good show, guys. Good stuff.
Straight bangers. Tiff and Kimball, everybody killing it. Rob, everybody, Logan, just not Holly.
Yeah,
just not
thanks everybody. Y'all are killing it for real. And
we have a lot of
he popped back up, but then he's gone again. I'm waiting to hear back from him.
He didn't pop back up. I think his phone died, and when phone dies, it leaves it like you're still in here, and so when he'll have to come back in.
It could be.
Well,
I did mention like last week about a charger, but I didn't think to like re-mention it today.
Yeah, they drain your phone, man. I was at 3% for a minute. We'll get him back in here. Jamie and Cody, I'll get you up here in a minute. Let's just chill out for a second. I'm gonna make a snack.
Keep going, Kimball.
Keep doing that.
Yeah, why'd you stop?
Elevator music.
It was a
Someone
meme,
should
but okay.
Get some
crash retrievals. Like, what are the crash retrievals then? If it's like not real stuff going on,
They're a Rat Pat.
No, not where they are, but like what they are.
Oh, what they are? Yeah, I don't know. Ask Tom DeLong.
No, we won't ask Tom DeLong anything. He'll tell us that Bill Clinton's a reptilian shapeshifter, which he might be. I don't know.
I have seen his eyes shift one time speaking with him. That was a total bullshit story.
How does that shit just roll off your tongue, Shane? Honestly.
Oh, I don't know. I don't even remember half the things I said. I don't even remember what I just said.
Yo, Kimball, can we at least get to like one verse?
Hey, Kimball, we might be fucked for next weekend.
I mean,
my
really
wife
wants
just
me to go to New York, so that might
okay. Well, my wife just sprung on me. I knew Shane was going to protest. My wife just sprung on me going to Chattanooga this next weekend because she's off because it's Good Friday and her company she works for is super religious. So I'm sure that's going to be a family gig, and that's probably going to push that back a weekend.
Yeah.
And I really wanted Jacob to come anyway instead of her. So there is that as well.
Well, they got that cute little bridge in Chattanooga. So.
Cool. I just I saw he popped back up. I shot him a message or an invite.
Yeah, we're getting him back up here. I just saw him actively watching. So if you had your hand up and you've spoken in this intermission, please put it back up, and we'll get to it like we're doing.
So check this out. Do me a favor, retweet this space, quote it, hashtag it. Been pretty informative. Actually, I've been quite enjoying listening to Steve. A lot of the stuff he was talking about, I believe 100%, especially because I read a lot of Keel, things like that. When he said, mentioned the eighth tower on ultra terrestrials, stuff like that, I was just like, oh, this dude. So this is some informative stuff. So retweet, add some stuff in there. Get other people in here and listening. Got questions, put them in there. This is a great space, Green. Shane,
yeah,
co-hosting.
I wanted to bring up with him about my daughter seeing the manta that time, and telling me on the back porch, but I didn't want to take up any more time. I done stepped on Tiff because the kids had come home. So,
Is Steve back up here? Hey, Steve, you back?
Some people are going to need cycled down. We've had people waiting for a bit, so you guys.
yeah, I'll bounce. I'll bounce down. My kids are home, so
I'll drop down.
I'll talk
All
to
right.
you guys in a bit.
Hi guys.
Yeah, we
Sorry
have
about
4 requests. You're good. Did your phone die, Steve?
No, it just completely went off and came back on again.
Yeah, so I've been doing spaces for a while. When I get some of my buddies at work at Skinwalker Ranch and stuff in here, and we'll talk, the whole space will end. I'll get bugged. My phone will just lose all battery randomly when we start talking about anything that's like his government involved.
Yeah, it does happen.
So you brought up the implants, man. It was over.
It does happen, but the principal part of that is that some of the materials and the implants were found to have a 4% isotopic differential, like the UFO metamaterials. 15 years apart that research was, but we realized only last year under Project Doorway that the two are made from the same stuff, which is really interesting.
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. I have a question, Steve, and someone had asked this while you were gone. If it's all a different phenomenon wearing different masks, what would the crash retrievals be in your opinion, or are there crash retrievals? Which I think there are.
Yeah. There's been plenty of them. Usually greys, most of them. But there's about 17 different versions of the grey. I mean, how many versions are there of humans? Quite a lot, isn't there? So it's not surprising we're getting variations. Some of them are up to quite tall as well. So not all small. And there are slightly different greys as well. Some of them have a browny tinge more so than a grey, according to the documentation. But there's multiple different things. I love the ones from the 1970s because they used to appear as like long-haired dudes with silver suits on, like come straight out of a 70s rock band.
Venusians? Are you talking about the Venusians, Steve?
Yeah. I mean, we've got cases in the UK during the 1970s where they had long hair and silver suits on, like shell suits. So if you remember them, silver boots. They look like something that comes straight out of a 70s rock band.
Yeah, I'm big into George Van Tassel and the Integratron and all that stuff, and that's how I always read up on the Venusians, and I love it. Steve, we got Red Panda in here with his hand up. He's a good friend of mine. He makes incredible documentary-type videos on YouTube. Go ahead, Panda.
I do think Just was ahead of me.
No, go ahead.
Okay, if you say so. Thanks. So I have 2 questions. I'll try to make it really quick and brief. Have it on my notes here. Oh yeah, so I guess briefly, what's your take on like Uri Geller, Nina Kulagina, some of the Chinese teleportation manifesting studies? Do you think that humans have the ability to remote view, do telekinesis, manifest objects? And if they do you think it's the phenomena like using the human as like a conduit or kind of like, or do you think it's the human doing it itself? And then real quick, I'll just say the second one so I could hop down and let someone else in. Recently we had Sean Kirkpatrick, the head of Aero, brief the American National Academy of Sciences. And I really like your scientific mind approach to this. And I was wondering if there's any kind of efforts that you have planned or you see on the horizon for engaging the Royal Society, which I believe is the UK Academy of Sciences. Thank you. It's been a great talk.
Thank you. But the first question, absolutely yes on all of them. Psychotronic and specialized psychic testing has been going on for a long time now. The Germans and the Russians and even the Swiss actually have been doing this for a long time. Using certain types of equipment to enhance these abilities, though that some people do have those abilities, but they do come at a cost. I mean, you look at Nina Kulagina, not only information ever got out because someone actually sneaked it out to get it out into the US, but there are a lot of people like that who have certain abilities. Hers was PK, but she ended up dying. It's what you don't hear is that she was put through so many tests, she ended up exhausted and she ended up partially blind, which is due to severe exhaustion. She died. through the processes of these experiments. There are countless other people that have got certain abilities. I've witnessed some of these abilities. I've witnessed catalysts. We have an A-list of catalysts around the world, only about 19, but they are phenomenal, and they show abilities well beyond the normal, anything capable that we should be able to do. They do exist, and it's like breaking the mold. I mean, it's just something else going on with these people. But it's the problem is the science is still trying to catch up, and we're still trying to learn. But we realized very early on about remote viewing was very, very successful. That's why it got introduced into the military concepts with Blue Flame and Grill Flame, should we say, and as Stargate programs and stuff like that. I mean, Ingo Swann was an incredible person for conducting remote viewing of even the moon and planets and all sorts of different things. And he was introduced with the military into remote viewing UFOs and its occupants, and they were taken by military people to a certain given area where these things are manifesting regularly. And he panicked, because it was the first time he realized that whoever the occupants were on board were aware of him remote viewing, and that he did not like. That's the first time he'd experienced that, and he suddenly got out of dodge on that one. But yeah, there have been some amazing experiments in that. So yes, the limitations of the human brain. We are limited, and we have been purposely, I think, limited. But occasionally, some just break that mold, and they have certain key things that they're capable of doing, and they are absolutely remarkable. I'm always hearing stories, or from all around the world, and there's very little information getting out about real phenomena, and the tests are just not shared, because everything can be weaponized, and that's a real big problem at the moment. This is why you don't get so much sharing of this information. You find little bits and bobs, and you've got to do the research and put things together yourself. And as for the second question, where are we going with it? Well, the problem is some of this stuff that I'm saying, there's some things I can't say, and there's some things I have said, which is okay, which is not ready to be in the public hands as yet. There are 19 experiments, and only 2 of them have been documented and released to the public out of 19. There's still 17 hold back, because there's certain parties that don't feel that that it's the best advantage is to give that to the public hands at this moment in time. A lot more further research is required. But what we are going to realize, especially, I'll tell you now what's coming next. What's coming next is the realism that how advanced we are, and it's going to be happening over the next 10 years, because they can't hide it anymore. And like your tic-tac UFOs and stuff, and unmanned aerial drone. The drone wars have been going on for like 15 years, if not longer now. And between different countries, these things can fly at an incredible speed, utilizing propulsion engines you couldn't even dream about. But those have been around since the 60s. They just fine-tuned them, and we're going to be realizing very quickly that that's the process of monitoring other countries is through drone technology now and satellites. So, and the problem is that that when people want to come out and say, well, you know what, these things are UFOs and da 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 da, and it generates a threat. Well, it's only to generate money, defense money. At the end of the day, they know what's going on. There are ours out there, and there are others out there. The problem is we've come a time now we cannot identify the difference. That's the problem. The biggest way we can find out the difference is that how certain things we are unable to do, and that is the materialization and dematerialization process of the real phenomena. We cannot do that. We can't cheat it. We can't fake it. That's one. They've got one hand up on us on that one for sure. But when you're actually seeing a structured craft in the sky which you cannot identify, it's just an unidentified flying object. It does remain it's a UFO. Doesn't mean it's anything else but that. Problem is that there's ours is up there as well, and that's a real big problem, because they don't mind flying them over cities now because everyone says UFO.
Wow. Thanks again, Steve. That was perfect. Let's go with Jade.
Hi. I'm just wondering, you seem to lump everything together. You seem to lump the UFO, like a lot of researchers are lumping UFOs and the psychic phenomena and also paranormal phenomena. What about the shadow biome that Gary Nolan talks about? How does it correlate with this? Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, and also one more thing, um, that the phenomena seems to manifest physically with the abductees. Like you'll see scoop marks, you'll see marks after they say they've been abducted. How do you account for this? Like, how does it manifest physically? Is it a control system? Is it something, that is actually physical, or is it part of the shadow biome?
Well, experiments are carried on. I mean, been going on for a long, long time. This is you and just as me are products of that. You're just not aware of it. But we are a product of that. Human sapiens sapien now is a product of manipulation. We know that now we get very clever in DNA analysis now. Very, very clever. We can look at chromosome 2 and we can say, hang on a second, chromosome 2, that's been fused. How does it get fused? Well, the only way to fuse chromosome 2 is just through genetics. The human body, you, me, and most of the people we all know, have so many genetic errors in the human body. It's remarkable. We're supposed to come from the apes and we're supposed to have evolved. Well, we take the typical chimpanzee, only has about 10 to 20, genetic errors, where the human has thousands of genetic errors because we're products of manufacture. The last time we saw that many genetic errors was in Dolly the sheep when we cloned her. It just goes to show that we are the products of manipulation over periods of time. Now, whoever's doing that or whatever's doing that is seemingly carrying it on. What is the next stage? I believe some of those next stages is manipulation between themselves and us, that there are half us and half them and quarter us and quarter them, and and the process is to be able to two things, is to visually be able to survive in an environment with humans without being recognized as so. And then secondly, and the biggest problem for them, I believe, is about the illnesses and the bugs and the things that we carry. Everybody, it's all on planet Earth. This is why we don't seem to see them in our environment very often, very short-lived. In fact, when people are taken, they're usually taken to their environment, very quickly. And that immunity problem is reflective within the mutilation phenomenon. It's been going on for hundreds of years. And that they're taken from the soft tissue of these animals. And the soft tissue is where mucous membrane lies. A mucous membrane lies in all the soft tissue, and it's also associated to our immune system. And what happens is that these animals are mutilated whilst they're alive. Unfortunately, it's terrible, but they are. And they're mutilated whilst they're alive because they want to induce fear and pain, which causes a supersonic boost in immunity at the same time, which is taken away quickly from soft tissue areas in the blood. So I believe all the process of doing that is about immunity. I think, when these guys can fix that and that they can survive in our reality for longer periods of time, I think we're probably going to end up experiencing a lot more phenomena. But for me, that's the only thing I can consider the reasons behind some of this mutilation phenomena.
So would you say David Jacobs is correct that they're making hybrids?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're genetically creating all sorts of different things. Yeah, I mean, we are. Well, you just don't hear about it. Well, you can't tell me. People with billions and billions of dollars in secret societies or secret programs aren't taking the best genetics from certain animals and introducing them into the humans. Of course, they are. The Super Soldier program. We'd love to be able to see in the dark and be 10 times faster and and have certain better hearing capabilities. We are so limited. We're the most limited animal on this planet. And now we're trying to break through that by introducing the best of other animals into the human genome. And that's how you create super soldiers. Those programs have been going on for quite some time, but I'm sure it'll be going on. I don't think we're much different than them. We're doing the same sort of studies. Our genetics has become very enhanced, and to the point where we can look at the DNA now and say, okay, well, we are looking out to lengthen life. And I'll tell you now, the first person to reach 200 years of age is already amongst us. He's already on this planet. That's how fast things are moving. Because all we got to realize is how to uncap those DNA ends, and then we start to live like the gods did, like the Sumerian gods and that, when they lived thousands of years. They obviously didn't want us humans to live that long.
That's a really good way to put it. It's kind of like a cycle almost, in my opinion, but we would just become like them, I suppose. I have a couple questions from the audience, Steve, and we'll get back to the hands. 3v3 Event Horizon asks, can someone ask him what are his thoughts on the tall whites or Magina? And for the second question, this is from UFO Chick. She says, I would like to ask Steve, out of everything he's done, what is he the most proud of? And also, what is the thing you're working on at the moment that you're the most proud of?
Oh, okay. Well, the first question is the tall whites. As far as I'm aware, I've been in quite a number of talks with people who have worked in. No, I can't tell you that. Sorry, but I can go at a different angle. They introduced into the 1950s into the tall whites a variation of the greys, which these are more responsive in regarding working on military programs with human military personnel. That's really all I can get into about the alleged documentation and things I've seen in association to partnership program. It's not with the small greys. It's not with the small greys. It's with the tall whites, or you want to call them, the lighter complexion ones. And the proudest thing I did, well, basically, during the experiments that we did 2 years ago, 2 years ago, in time displacements and measuring that and finding gravitational wells, I wanted to find a way we can not just measure it, because people always argue, well, it's the meter, it's a faulty meter, you're going to get another fault, you're going to get another meter, and well, it could be that meter, are you sure you're getting the right readings, and da 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 da. To put that to rest, I wanted to see, is there a way of visually being able to see a gravitational disturbance? And we worked it out. And the only way to do it is, it's quite simple, actually. But you know what? I said to physics guys, these are professors of physics, and they didn't get it round this tank meeting table. And I was saying, look, you can see the evidence of light bending. And they said, you can't have the bending of light. It'll take so much gravitational disturbance, like the sun, to even see an arc. And I said, no, you can do it by a simple method through the process of light scattering. So they asked me how to do that. So basically, the way to do that is quite simple. Yeah, and if you get one of these high-powered laser pens, preferably green, because it always shines up better. And what you do is, about 6 inches away from it, you fix a lens, a glass lens, a bit like the old bikes lights that you used to have many years ago. And basically, you fire the laser into the lens, and the lens takes the light and scatters it to its outer edge. So you're just seeing the light round the edge of the lens. And as you're walking through the gravitational disturbance, you can see the light pull away from the lens side, because what's happening, because of the scatter, the gravitational disturbance is grabbing the light waves and pulling it away from the sides. Now, if you have a look on the internet, and you're using a couple of examples we've got up there of this, you can see it. It's basically using a lens and laser light to bending laser light through magnetics, and we use simply just a magnet to show you that we can bend the light. And that's what was happening through these only very short-lived gravitational anomalies, is that you could see it. You could physically see it for the first time. You don't have to rely on a piece of equipment anymore. You can see what's causing it. That I was proud to do, actually, because I was so frustrated with so many people saying, oh, it's got to be the meter, it's faulty. I mean, these are really expensive meters. These don't go faulty. And we have a number of them. And I wanted to prove the fact that, well, you know what, let's not rely on the meter then. let's rely on visual eyesight and the bending of light because there's magnetics in the area affecting it. And we did so, and we documented it, and we went back, we demonstrated it, and they had to hold the hands up and say, yeah, you know what, it is a demonstration of light being bent by a magnetic anomaly, which is very, very interesting.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I've been meaning to ask. I don't want to forget to ask you about the correlation between high electromagnetic waves and the phenomenon, but we'll get to the hands first. Let's go with my buddy Neanderthal, then B, then Carlos.
Hey,
And also,
Steve.
real quick, Neander, Kyle, I'm trying to get you up, but I don't know. It's not letting me. Go ahead, Neander.
Hey, Steve, really appreciate you coming. This has been a great space. Thanks to Screen and the Council of Shanes for hosting. So I apologize if somebody already asked this, but I was wondering what your opinion is on the current disclosure narrative we see unfolding, and what, if any, role you think the phenomenon plays in it itself. And then also, I wondered if in any of your research, if you've come across any techniques that people have used in order to, like, I guess, set up sort of a defense for the negative aspects of the interactions. Like if they've had any success using like meditation techniques or anything else to like ward off like the hitchhiker effect or the negative effects once they've started. And thanks again.
Okay, again, two good questions. It goes very deep. Your first question goes very deep. I can say that there are a large number of establishments worldwide, government, military establishments, which utilize the phenomena. Some of this phenomena in negative regions, negative positive regions manifest. Now, in negative positive regions, according to the surveys and research that's been carried out during Project Doorway, we found that these areas are problem areas of crime, illness, and an immense amount of suicide. And these are the effects of living long-term in areas of less than 150 nanoteslas, minus nanoteslas, should I say. These are very, very reverse polarity magnetic regions, and they're not good. They're not good to live in. But there is something which is associated to, you could say, the reverse polarity regions. And those things are not nice. Those things are you probably your nasty stuff. This is where you'll get reports of the most traumatic of experiences, where people have been seriously injured or even killed, or even even worse, where there's a number of people been involved in suicide. And also that what they realized, military establishments some years back, if they manufacture weapons in these particular areas, the success rate on weapon manufacture and the use is amplified. Because these negative areas were also areas in ancient times for a mass amount of blood sacrifice worship by ancients. And there are a number of these places all over the world. And what we found from the 60s and 70s, that they started relocating these military establishments, started relocating them to these negative regions because it's more productive for them. So there's definitely something for it. I mean, exactly the same place happens in the UK. There's a place called Salisbury Plain, and it's basically right where Stonehenge is. You know, if you walk about half a mile away from Stonehenge, you're in an area where you're walking through a field, and there's tanks and military aircraft flying around and firing things onto the ground. And so, there's a test ranges, and there's a weapons manufacturers, also chemical weapons manufacturing facility there. They relocated them there purposely because it's in negative regions. And we were very surprised to find that about over 70% of them have been relocated into negative regions all over the world. I mean, they did that when they got into Iraq. I mean, America found one particular location which was very, very potent, and it is an ancient site there, and it's in kind of Baghdad. And what they did is they built the American embassy around it. It's actually sat in the middle of the American embassy. It's like the Pentagon. There's an area in the middle which isn't used. It's a void. But the only way to get that is to go through the facility itself. And they built a giant, massive, it's huge embassy, American embassy, and it's built in such a way that it actually circumnavigates right round it. So there's no way to actually get it. They cut it off from society, and again, purposely built there for that reason. So this has been going on for quite some time. There are people at a higher end in secret societies and in the military that know this, that know that they can have better advancements by doing things of not the greatest nature. And this is why when people say, why is there so much bad stuff that goes on in governments, and why is there so many bad things happening to kids, and why is there so many things happening where they're worshipping Magog and all these other weird deities, because you think to yourself, well, it's got to be worth it because you're getting something out of it. Well, they're getting success out of it. I mean, that can be associated with health and wealth, but the success on programs, weapon manufacturing, and global domination, I suppose, because that's what everybody kind of wants. It's always been that since the caveman days. Guy with the biggest stick wins. It's a problem which they thought would give them the upper hand. So they've been utilizing that ancient areas which our ancestors realized what existed years ago. Maybe they were more in tune, because when we go and dig up bones, we can't tell you how psychic they were or consciousness wise of what was around them. Probably a lot more enhanced than we were. But they knew where these locations were, and they knew what to build on those locations. And there are different things there for different reasons. Some of them for communication, some for blood sacrifice. People will talk about Stonehenge. Oh, it's lovely. Let's take the kids out to Stonehenge for the day. Well, what's this, Mum, in the middle? Oh, it's a sacrificial stone where people were blooded to death. And it's a sacrificial bloodstone. That's what was happening. It's a negative area. This is still there today, and everybody says how great Stonehenge is. But there are people in high places that know how to manipulate the system, and you can. And it's no different than waking up tomorrow and saying, you know what, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to every part of that day, I'm going to be thinking, I deserve to get this. This is what I want. And you know what? Reality will start to alter. You'll start getting the things you want. And it does work. We can't break it, but we can bend it to our advantage. And that can be utilized in the negative regions by authorities all over the world.
Thank you, Steve. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think a lot of people are messaging me and DMing me that they're loving what you're saying, man. And thanks again for everybody for coming. I'm glad Screen could do this. We've been preaching, like I said, we've been preaching your stuff till blue in the face, man. Next up is my buddy Carlos, and then we're gonna go with B, who I know is dying to ask you a question.
Yeah, thanks for letting me speak to both Shanes and to Screen to a lesser extent. That wasn't Shane. Sorry. Anyways, so Steven, I was just wondering. So one of my favorite quotes, it's from a video game, but I think it's relevant. Is that one of the finest shades of communication is the difference between I didn't understand that and I understand that, but I don't care. Do you think that these beings, do you think that they view themselves on our level, or do you think that they just and when I say on our level, it's like with my dog, if it was like a better example, maybe like a wild animal that you find, that you normally like wouldn't care about, but for some reason you start taking care of it, you develop a bond with it, and eventually you start taking care of it. Do you think that they're just something isn't connecting between the communication that we're having with them, or do you think that they're just they really don't care the way that we don't care about a mountain when we mine it? I don't know if any of
They
them
don't.
have those.
Yeah, it's a good question, and the bottom line is, I mean, it took quite some time because what I had to do is I had to empty the knowledge of crap, excuse the language, but from my mentors that taught me. I mean, I started in this subject. My first investigation was in 1983, and in the early 80s, I was being taught by my mentors that the phenomena represents this, that, and the other. And boy, were they were absolutely wrong. I used to empty that full glass of knowledge that I thought was right and pour it out and refill it with what I think is correct. And from that process, I've realized that they don't give a damn about us, that we are not. They really do not give a damn about us. I mean, on one hand, they've turned, I mean, we look at the Intruders Foundation where people have been abducted, this poor woman, and they turned around this entity to her and said, I'm sorry that there might be some little discomfort in regarding the light. This woman was practically was blinded in one eye for the rest of her life. It literally burnt out the back of her retina. The actual pain she received was, you just couldn't imagine. And they turn around and say, I'm sorry about that, that you might have some discomfort. I mean, they don't give a damn. I mean, they go about agenda, that's all. And when they think that they want to manipulate you into thinking that it's a good process for long-term contact, then they will do. They will do that, and they'll say, and people come away and say, "Oh, my experiences are fine. They do this and they do that." Well, that's okay because it's agenda. It's exactly what they want to do. You're a test subject. I don't think they care. Now, what I do think they care about is the planet. There's something about the planet they care about. They don't care much about us. They're watching us, all right. But they certainly don't think much to us, I don't think. Not after hearing these people's traumatic experiences where they just cannot go on and carry on with their lives normally after the trauma that they've experienced. I mean, the pain that they receive during certain experiments when they're taken, and the endurance of knowing that their children are being taken and stuff as well. These things do happen. It runs in family. If it's running in the family line, it's genetic. They're following genetic information, so it's going to pass from person to the youngers and so on and so forth. It's not a pleasant experiences. These people are traumatized. They don't quite understand that sometimes kids can, these manifest themselves trying to hide it's another mask, and they'll appear as a jester or appear as something else, and it's equally just as scary, if not worse, for the children. They don't understand what's going on, and even in some adults, it's happened. When they think that they're actually talking to a human being, and it's not. In some cases, they've manifested themselves as tried to make the rooms on these crafts, wherever they are, conducting these experiments, like a doctor's surgery, not quite got it right. You've got wooden panels up on the wall, and it's not wood. It's just manipulating your mind to think it is. It's like a doctor's room, but it isn't. And that's the more scary than anything, is that they are. And they do, on most occasions, take away those memories because they know how traumatic it is, and yet they still do it. And that concerns me. And anybody who's got any ethical rights in medical will say, let's not do it, because it leaves mental scars behind that they will live with for the rest of their life. Well, they know that. They would know that. They're not that daft. I would have thought not to know that. That's why they take the memory away. But they know that we're also going to retrieve those memories sometimes through dreams and processes, or even hypnotic regression. So, do they care? I don't think so. Do they care about the planet? Yes, I do think they care about the planet. I think they do some stupid stuff sometimes, like land in schoolyards and tell 8-year-olds how to save the planet. We need to save the planet. We need the ecology of the planet. It's not very good. Well, don't tell a school ground of 8-year-old guys and girls, because they won't know what to do with that information. And it's the same old process. It's like the one-liner. This is what you say. Yeah, ecology of the planet. Ecology of the planet. And if you take a simple case like the Rua incident in Zimbabwe, where the aerial school, the kids were in the playground, this object comes down. What you don't hear about is, after all seen, is that there was one of these entities stood on one of the crafts which had landed, and the entity did something to 5 children, because those were all running away except for 5 that started to walk towards it, and they got very close to this thing. And what it did is it generated an image in their heads. And what they all said, these 5 children, nobody else, just these 5 kids, said, suddenly we saw this other entity. And it was really weird because it was skipping and jumping and running along, and then would disappear and appear back at the beginning again, and skipping and jumping and running along and appear. It was just like a scene from a movie being played. They were confused. They were glamoured by that. And whilst they're transfixed on this image, which is being produced by this entity, the entity starts to move towards them and got so close to them that it could basically, they knew straight away that the words appeared in their head, we want you to come with us. You know, now that is scary. That is deception. That is, you know, there's no love and light there, and walking towards it because you want friendship. You know, it's even in those cases back then, and it's been going on for a long time. So no, I don't think they really care too much about us. I think it's agenda. They've got jobs to do, and they go about doing it. They pretend that they might be concerned when they're not. They'll say there might be some discomfort when it's a lot worse than that. And I don't think they really care the long-term processes of what we're left with after those experiences, unfortunately.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I just have one follow-up, and then I'll switch back to being a listener. Do you think that we can traumatize them back?
Do we think what, sorry?
Do you think that we can combat them back or traumatize the phenomenon back? Do you think that they've ever gone into like a human's room? And this is all speculation, but I'm going to follow what Chaos was saying. And like they've gone to glamour them or something, and they just couldn't. Like you said that there's 19 people you're aware of that have special powers. Do you think it's ever come into contact where someone from our race is able to defend ourselves from whatever this is?
Well, actually, I think that it's actually the reverse. I mean, people with certain abilities, they're attracted to, you know, and because it's just opening a doorway of further experimentation and genetics to find out why is this person different than others. There may be reasons behind that, but then surely that seems to be the case where they seem to have an interest in people who have a catalyst rather than a deterrent. I think the best deterrents is in fact that do not show too much. I mean, you know what? I'm bad for myself. I'm giving advice here. That stuff I don't do myself because I'm a researcher and I'm well involved in it. I can't get out of that scenario now. But if I was asked years back, do I want to come out? Do I want to stop now, not go any forward because it might interfere with my life? I might have said yeah. You know, it was upsetting to see my 4 young girls screaming at the ages of 7 and 8 and 9. I had to go flying up into the bedroom and trying to figure out for my 3-year-old girl and 3 others, which I'm trying to get words out of the mouth to say, what the hell's going on? Why have you all, this is 11 o'clock at night and don't wake up at that time. The sky people, they're outside the window and they drew it and it wasn't good. It wasn't good. And I was angry. I was upset. I was angry, and I thought, how stupid was I? How naive was I to think that it was just going to be me? They won't bother having showing interest in others. And I thought, oh my God, you know, that's a deterrent and a half, I'll tell you. You know, but you know what? It's like you get attracted into it so much that you leave them to get older, and then you start going back into it, and you start delving into things where it affects your family. You know, it affects the people you're with. You know, I see UFOs quite regularly. The people I'm with will see them with me. You know, people have never seen anything in their lives until they spend a few weeks with me. You know, it's just, my world is weird because of what I do. And it's the same for Bio, where we don't talk about it. We don't say about it too much because it's personal stuff. But at the end of the day, and not a month goes by without crazy stuff happening. And it's because of what we do, because they show an interest in us, because we show an interest in them. And I would say to anybody, you know, take that seriously. Think about that seriously, because it's not just you, it's your family. It's the people you love, the people you live with can be adversely affected by this. And if worse, it can actually put a real dark streak through and cause problems in your life, such as the worst problems you could ever think of happening beyond coincidence. You know, this is what Bigelow says as multiple negative serendipities. You don't want them, and that is when you've upset them. and that is when there's something going on where it basically sets root, and when it does, it just everything goes wrong for you. And it's not a good situation to be in. So yes, there were warnings about this phenomena. It's fascinating and it's interesting. It draws you in, but to a point where the door won't shut no more, and it stays open ajar. If you can control it and just keep it ajar, that's great. But once they start interacting from their side, it's hard to control, and that's a real tricky business.
Holy crap! Yeah, I didn't think about it that way. That's so sick. We got a bunch more hands. Let's see. I'm gonna get to B, as she's had her hand up for a good minute, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Shane. Guys, friends, everybody, thank you for hosting this space. Mr. Mera, I'm so happy that you're able to do this and that these guys brought you together to our knowledge. I actually, Brother Shane, have 3 pages written down of questions that I would love to get Mr. Mera back into a Wednesday Woo chat to talk about, because I know there's a lot of hands. My first and foremost question, though, is when you're talking about all the experiencers and the effects of the radiation and the gravitational fields around them. I know that there's been research done and found. I know Red Panda Koala did a fascinating study on the Nino Kuljalini, the Russian PK woman, and I know I recently found some work stating that the stuff around they documented the gamma radiation and stuff in her vicinity, as well as I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Jim Segala. He was documenting and doing a lot of the work out there. In the basin out there between Dog Frog Ranch and or whatever the name of it is, and a couple other places, and they were able to document some of this high strangeness around people, and it was fascinating because he was the one that really piqued the interest that it wasn't the spot that was the hot spot, because they were monitoring it from afar, and these people would document and everything, but they also had scientific monitors. And during a course of like 2 weeks, one of their prime experiencers, the activity just stopped. And so like a month later or whatever, Dr. Segala got back up with him and asked him about it. And he's like, oh no, I left, I was on vacation for 2 weeks, but it didn't stop. It was with me the whole time. So that cued him in on, it's the person instead of the hot spot, but they also documented more gamma radiation. Also in a paperwork that Christopher Green did on Uri Geller, documenting when he was doing spoon bending, they got some diffuse particles of radiation captured as well. And I'm wondering from your aspect, when people start interacting with this phenomena, there's often a sudden increase of psi-like interactions. And if you've documented that kind of stuff with that, I'm really interested in the damages and the biophysiological damages that people are facing this stuff.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good question. It's a tricky one to answer without actually saying things I shouldn't say. But there is, with many people, that there is an induction of external phenomena which is manifesting around them, and that comes in the ways of certain energy forms, be it gamma and radiation, that sort of thing. It's also associated to the manifestation phenomena, because we see as a manifestation, we think, oh, it's something physical. But no, I mean, you could have a manifestation of non-physical stuff as well. It could be taking place because we don't see it, we don't feel it, we don't know it's there, but it's measurable. And what is measurable is the gamma and radiation under those certain conditions. Now, certain experiments have taken place before to bring forward the production of gamma and radiation through the process of meditation and focal thinking in association to phenomena manifesting in key locations. So, this is something, but it's not from our side. It's from another side. It's from the other reality. I think I couldn't say for sure, but it's not an external thing from our reality. It seems that there's an association between those experiments and that other reality, and that is associated with the other reality because we find trace elements of those things in key areas of manifestation. So we know that that's something, it's a byproduct of the manifestation, be it physical or not, or it is produced by the interaction between the person, the experimenter, the observer, and the phenomena. So it gets a bit deep, but I would lean more to be an external interactive part of the phenomena as opposed to a general manifestation through those individuals creating it. I hope that answers it. But yeah.
Yeah, Steve, it did. I get some of the guys from Skinwalker Ranch in here sometimes, and they can't talk about a lot of stuff either. So I feel you. Thanks for sharing what you can, and definitely don't get in trouble on our account. I'm gonna get back to. We have a lot of hands. Oh my god. Let's go with Cody. I'm not sure if I've heard from him yet. Then we'll go from there.
What's up, y'all? I really just wanted to ask y'all if the mothership ever landed. I heard about a mothership on the internet, and I was just wondering, did y'all ever hear anything about it?
That was a story from Avi Loeb, man. But no, not that we're aware of. But we're talking
Shane,
to Steve
real
Mera
quick,
right
just so you know, Shane, Cody's he's a relatively thinks he's funny, non-funny guy. Just likes to come up in rooms, do that. That's why I removed him.
No, it's okay. It's actually it's taken out of context somewhat about Avi's work. So I'm aware of Avi's work and the program and stuff. It's part and parcel of some of the work I do in the think tank. So, but his most interesting work was, was initially the what was it called, the Wanga, which was the a very unusual looking asteroid, which was elongated shaped, and only because it, of its direction change and the things that it should have done and didn't, which caused it to make it sound more extraterrestrial rather than a normal thing. And it's very profound, and it's the first time we've seen that. I mean, but they're no longer been watching the skies for in a professional manner with the equipment that we've had is only short term. So it's taken out of context somewhat. I've seen all the stories all over the internet. I'm usually fast on them, but I know how it kind of originated and stuff. But you know what? Don't get me wrong. There are lots of anomalies out there. Lots of them. I mean, you know what? You can just go off the twin Soho satellites, which are constantly videoing the sun, and we see objects going in and out of the sun, and they are objects going in and out of the sun. And we don't know how that works. We don't know the physics, how it's involved, and we don't know what those objects represent. There are lots of, that's just one anomaly out of hundreds of they've found, but they won't come out with any information because these people need to determine exactly what those are before they say what they are. And that's a it's a tricky, long process of learning. But we just have to be 10 times more in advance than what we consider ourselves to be to understand some of those what those things are. But we get plenty of those stories all the time. Unfortunately, when you get to the root of it, it suddenly, unfortunately, diminishes quite a lot.
Hey, Steve, I appreciate you taking that question. That would have been one of the trolls that I mentioned. But, that is the type of stuff that we deal with, right? That's why, we're three experiencers. I saw TR3B so close I could have hit it with a rock. Shane follows lights in the skies to precious minerals. UFO Shane, he saw a helicopter with no power source, fly across the room. We've all, seen this stuff, but when you try to tell people that aren't into it, like maybe that guy was, it helps to have things like the Salvatore Pais patents for like the TR3B. So just to kind of back things up a little bit, and like that's what I think Project Doorway does in a sense. It just puts all these weird phenomena things in perspective of like how they could be happening in a regular way, and I
Well,
really think
true.
that's what people need to see.
It's very true. I mean, I really do admire some people. I've never experienced anything. I think to myself, it's how profound that is for me. When I grew up as an experience. I don't talk about it, but the experiences came first. People say, "How do you get into it?" And most of the time, when talking, I usually say, "Well, it's down to my dad, and he had an interest in the subject, and I kind of got it from him." But you know what? I'm an experience. I do hold my hands up and say that, but I don't like to very often because people think you're biased in regarding your investigations, and this is the problem. I guarantee most of the people in the subject, at the higher ends of this subject, that we hear about on the lecture circuit, like I do, they have experiences and don't say so because they think that it might damage their reputation or how people might think regarding how they conduct investigations. It's a tricky situation, but if people haven't experienced it, then that's great because I don't want them to believe it. I don't want them to until they do see it, because I wouldn't have done. I'll be totally honest with you. I came pretty much from an academic background in psychology and parapsychology and stuff like that, and I wouldn't have done if there's no way I would have swallowed any of this until I experienced something. And it was only when I experienced it. I was
Let's lose audio. Are you there, Steve?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Audio loop or something happened. So I didn't hear the last part of that.
My microphone was.
You know what? I don't mind skeptics. I don't mind people don't believe, because I would have done. If I hadn't experienced it myself, I would never swallowed it. No, not a chance. Some of the things that I've seen, and I try and explain to some people, they just look at me as if I'm weird, and I think to myself, maybe I shouldn't have said that. And the fact is that yes, and I don't have to, because people with me saw it as well. Which is good, which helps me sometimes, because I think to myself, am I going crazy? I look out my bedroom window one night and there's a tree opposite, and in there's a beach ball sized light, and it's moving around the tree. It's moving around and it's dodging around, and it's just sat there in front of me. I'm just looking at it. It's 30 feet away from me in the tree opposite my house. So I'm looking out the bedroom window at night, and it just slowly but surely sinks into itself and disappears. And I think to myself, why? Why is it in a tree? Why is it across the road 30 feet away? And why did I have to get up and see that? What the hell is going on? You tell people these things, and it's only because I experience them, I talk about them, because you become a believer when you experience them. And I don't have any problem with people that don't believe it because they've not experienced it, because I would have been exactly the same, to be honest.
Actually, I was the same. I didn't get into this until I had an experience. I had weird experiences growing up and things I wrote off as tricks of the mind and just didn't think twice about it. But when I was up close and personal with things, anti-gravity and invisibility, two things supposed to be impossible, there they are. That really changed things for me. I had to. Seeing is believing. I was all in at that point. And like you said, it does kind of affect, your relationships and everything. And actually, that brings me into something I wanted to ask you about. Patrick Jackson's been doing some work, and he's got these devices that apparently can trigger some of the phenomena that he claims to be these little spheres, like almost like a bet sphere. And I don't want to do that, and then because I interact with so many people, I don't want the hitchhiker effect, to go on to them. But we have people like Daryl John Kemp setting up high-speed cameras, and they're catching these what some people call shadow beings that have elongated type skulls, or even like elemental type beings. Are you familiar with any of that stuff? Setting up high-speed cameras, and they're catching these what some people call shadow beings that have elongated type skulls, or even like elemental type beings. Are you familiar with any of that stuff?
We cannot hear your mic, Stephen. Well, I can. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Were you able to hear screen, Stephen?
Say that again, Paul.
Were you able to hear screen? Screen just now?
Yeah, it's on. It's on at the moment. I'm not seeing it, but it's working.
Okay.
Oh,
Screen, do you
crap.
want to ask again? He may have had some problems.
That's okay. Yeah. If you can ask again.
Can y'all hear me without an echo? Is it working?
Yeah,
I can hear you
I
fine.
can hear you now.
You may need to step him
Okay,
down.
perfect.
Yeah.
I was just curious if you were familiar with any of Patrick Jackson's work or like people catching these shadow beings
Yeah, me
with
okay,
high-speed
guys?
cameras. Can you ask him that for me, Shane? I don't think he can hear me.
Yeah, Steve, are you familiar with any of Patrick Jackson's work and the Bet Sphere thing, any of his theories or anything like that?
Yeah, I've looked at that. I've actually looked at a number of them sort of thing, those studies and stuff in regarding those items up. Interesting, but it's just unfortunate. There's not enough data. That's the only problem. It's hard to get hands on the data to come up with good conclusions. This is the problem, So that's a real. But I always find them interesting. Yeah, they're very interesting. But it's just I just cannot find my hands to get onto any of that data to conclude one thing or another.
Don't worry, I don't think anyone else can either. Patrick was supposed to do an interview, and me and Scream were waiting on it, and it never happened. And people will come to me. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And people will come to me and talk about Patrick, and I'll be like, well, if you like Patrick, check out Steve Mera and Barry Fitzgerald. They have actual things that corroborate what they're saying. But that's just me. Go ahead, old vet.
Hey, real quick, I was going to say, Screen, why don't you leave, come back, and I'll bring you back up since he can't hear you. I want to make sure you're the host. But I do got a quick question before we get to anybody else. Earlier, you had mentioned kind of kills ultra terrestrials, and I'm curious if you think that them using the EM spectrum, whatever you want to call it, to change to that's what we're seeing there, right? If that is what is causing after effects, and if those are incidental or on purpose, and you had mentioned one of the cases, right? And that seemed to be on purpose. Do you think, though, that the actual injuries are on purpose, or perhaps those are incidental?
I think injuries are done accidental in most cases. However, Keel spent a lifetime in this subject before he kind of started to conclude it's like he had that light bulb moment one day and he saw, and it was only because Keel was heavily involved in paranormal just as much as ufological and things, where he woke up one day and hang on a second, everything that I'm doing here seems to be all interconnected. Maybe it's somehow connected. They're all together, entangled, and he came up with the idea, this idea of ultra-terrestrials because he didn't find enough evidence to support that the extraterrestrial hypothesis, just as I don't, even the modern day version. Interdimensional, maybe, from other realities, absolutely. But you know what? That's the same thing for spiritual communication. It's just, the other reality. We say it's the veil, we say it's this, that, and the other, but it's one of the same things. It's the same thing that all these other ancient civilizations have had different names for. But as I would say that he spent a lifetime in the subject and realised, and there are other pioneers in that subject. Dr. Jacques Vallée, who I know very well, I'm good friends with. He's another one for that. That's all entanglement in regarding the phenomena, and it seems to produce numerous different things in which we have put into boxes. We've named them and put them into certain boxes. There are many people now which are certainly getting there. They're getting there because what I want to do is
just tell them all, just get rid of all the theories and the compartmentalization,
and then you'll get there slowly.
Hey, thanks for answering that real quick, too. I want to connect with you. I write for the Roswell Daily Record, so I'd like to connect with you to interview you later on at some point, too. I'll get with you after this.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Green, Shane, you guys take back over. And everybody give us a retweet right now.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time today. It's been absolutely amazing and thought-provoking. When does your next book come out?
Actually, working on one with Barry at the
We're writing one together, and we're probably expecting it to come out sometime maybe. I'm hoping maybe early next year. I'm hoping. There's a lot. We're in the thick of research at the moment, but you know, I can tell you, it is worth the wait, because you know we really have pushed the boundaries to try and find out why does this phenomena have such a geological, geophysical connection. You know, and we might be actually really getting through some new areas of research there, which might show the reasons why. So I'm looking probably maybe for early next year, hopefully in spring at the latest. Maybe we've been plowing through it when we get enough time to work together.
Amazing. I'll be looking for that. Thank you.
Hopefully y'all can hear me. Logan, you want to go? Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Hey, so I wanted to say two things. So we know that that guy from Stanford, the doctor, Gary Nolan, he's studying people's brains, right? And some people's brains in particular have a little something funny going on in the caudate putamen. And these people that have this special kind of glitch with their brain, or not glitch, but I don't know, difference with their brains, seem to be also attracted to one another for some reason. There's an odd number of them seem to be married somehow, like more than could be called coincidental. And I wanted to ask you if you thought that was a phenomenon kind of pushing those people towards in some. And also, I think trash retrievals are like real physical crap. And I wanted to ask you if you thought that was a phenomenon kind of pushing those people towards in some.
How does it keep looping?
I don't think you heard me either.
One of the Shanes take over for us. I don't think they can hear me, I guess.
Just step him down and bring him back up. It's him that's glitching.
One of the Shanes take over for us.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Steven,
Yes,
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So everybody else is glitching. Somebody else. So screen. I think you actually. Do we have you guys leave, or maybe one of us is glitching in here? Steve, how easy would it be for you to leave the space and come back in and I bring you up? It might fix all the bugs that's going on, because right now you have people asking questions. I don't think you can hear them. It's Twitter. It's messed up.
Yeah, I didn't hear the question, unfortunately.
Screen, what do you want to do? You have Shane. What do you want to do?
Yeah, no. Hey, I'll drop back down. So you just take over, and if he can't hear me, you just relay or whatever. You take over.
Leave, and I'm gonna co-host.
That'll be
you back.
easier.
And, Logan, go leave,
all right,
and I'll bring you back up so you can re-ask that question. Let's move on right now. And like I said, guys, do me a quick favor. This is a fantastic space, very informative, educational, and I love the stuff he's talking about for sure. So retweet this, get more people in here, and thank you, Steve, for coming and doing this. This is super awesome. Who was next up here with their hand?
Perceiver has been waiting a long time.
Go, Perceiver.
Yeah, I had to leave and come back, so I am behind these other two, but I'm happy to go if they want to let me go either way.
Go ahead.
Sweet. Yeah, cool stuff to trip on. I think eventually we're going to get to what the Toltecs and the shamans that have unlocked these other layers of the onion. We're going to realize how close these the veil and you know, like it's very intellectual to me compared to the way shamans talk. They're not looking for scientific validation. They discover it through their own lucid dreaming breakthroughs, and that then they've discovered that we're in a dream right now, and that there's actually, we can go backwards through the stream of consciousness to that which is projecting this experience and meet that multiplicity of ourself, and we can switch grooves and enter into other layers of the onion. But it's quite uncomfortable and intense. It's what they call crossing the in-between in order to access the abyss. And I just think that the less we need to validate these things through this pseudoscience system that is based on an illusion to begin with, then we break free of the hive mind and the intellect and the linear, and start to travel and navigate and explore energetic discoveries. And I think that's how the great ones, the giants, that really had these discoveries, that's what they did. They validated these things through personal exploration rather than looking to calibrate and decipher things based on the limitations of the construct that we're in. So in a sense, we're in a phantom world. We're in a simulated environment that is like a training platform, and we're running around with microscopes and telescopes and trying to figure out what's going on, but it's a projection. And so we're going to constantly run into that discovery, but then when we discover that, we try to reference it based on the limitations of that construct's way in which it measures things. And so the only way to break free of that is to become wild and to become lucid. And that's a really risky thing. And shamans have to work with their apprentices in a very strategic way to unbind them from that.
Hey, real quick, for Steve, you got a question? We're utilizing some valuable time here. So get to your question real quick. We got lots of hands.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know I was supposed to ask a question. I was just wanting to talk. Never mind.
You're all
No, I
right.
like it.
We just know he's got valuable time. Go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry to miss
I
that.
like it. I like that. It's very thought provoking, and you are right, and in many ways there. I mean, you know what? Our ancestors were so much more advanced than we were, and we've lost our way. We've lost our path. We are a species of amnesia because of catastrophes over and over again, and we've been dumbed down. We've lost our connection with planet Earth, and it's we're aware of so many things, and I think you are right. But the problem is there are dangers in there, and you said there were dangers. I know there are, because crossing those veils, there are things there which aren't good, and you don't want them to infiltrate your life. And some people have done some silly things in the past and paid the price for that. And you've got to be very careful, because we don't have a full understanding of it. Just as you say, we are infants still. It's like we've gone back in time and having to reboot and start again, trying to figure out what it's all about. Problem is, though, it's a lot more. There is evidence of a synthetic reality. You are absolutely right, and we know that at a higher level, because we can manipulate that reality through thought process. And if we can manipulate it, then we know that it is simulated to some degree. Who else is manipulating it? Are better methods is some of these entities or whatever they represent. So I totally agree with you. You hit the nail on the head there. You are right. But the problem is that we're socialized and formatted into a way of thinking, this society, and that is far away from understanding that reality isn't the reality that we expected. And that's an unfortunate thing.
Hey, Stephen, can you hear me? Stephen. I think he still can't hear me. Oh, well.
Hey, Screen, you talk real quick.
No, we'll relay what you want to ask, though.
Oh, just ask him about like the caudate putamen thing. Like if he thinks the phenomena is pushing like those people that get married that have that extra functioning caudate putamen together, and ask him about the crash retrievals too. Like, what's he think about the physical crap that the contractors have?
Okay, cool. Let me see if he can hear me.
Did the music start
Hey,
playing?
Steve, can you hear me now?
I don't know what's Steve. Can you not? Can you hear me, Steve? Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you guys.
I don't know what's
Steve,
going
can you
on.
hear any of
Twitter's
us?
bugging out.
Just drop Steven down and bring him back up with like an invitation real quick. It's real quick. It'll reset him.
I was already on it.
And while he's doing that, guys, do me a favor real quick. Follow the co-hosts up here and myself. This is kind of a Old Vet Symposium Presents. Screen and Shane have been running a great space, lots of questions, and the answers are supreme. So retweet this. And shoot, I do this more often. This is some cool stuff. So keep going and check out the thread in there and donate to Wounded Warrior.
Don't know why.
I can keep talking. Donate to Wounded Warrior. Check out my podcast, Military Witness UAP, Roswell UFO Symposium, as well as Mind Escape, and some of our articles for the Roswell Daily Record, where we cover everything UAP related, that all aspects of the life, right? So we'll be touching on things that nobody else will. Currently working on crash retrievals and after effects.
Hey, so Steve, if you see an invitation on the front of your screen right now, just hit accept. And if you don't see that, just hit request from like that mic button in the corner to get back up here.
Hey Shane, do you mind mentioning that again in case
Yeah, hey
he can't
Steve,
hear
if you
either one
can't
of
see on your screen, there should be a button says request. Where you wait? What did you just say? You want them to get the mic, right? So we sent you an invite. Hit the like accept button, and it'll bring you up, and maybe that'll fix it. I'm kind of worried no one's hearing me. No one's answering. Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you. I just
Yep.
can't hear him or
I can
anything.
hear you,
I can
brother.
hear Logan. I could hear Screen.
Is this all a dream? Am I on edibles at this moment?
You're dreaming about being on edibles in a space
Oh, I am.
with an
There's a
awesome,
saying when I'm
epic
at a
guest.
convention, keep the edibles away from Shane, and it's a real saying.
Oh, since I have you here, Shane, and he's not here yet, what'd you do? I don't think you heard me earlier. Actually, you did hear me, didn't you? That question I asked you. You remember, like before he started?
Kind of do. Remind me a little bit. It was about.
It was like Keel wrote that thing in '67, right? But he wrote all his books after '67, so his opinions might have changed since he wrote that paper in '67 about too dangerous to release or whatever.
I don't know if they had changed. He was down. Look, all I know is this: his beliefs on the phenomenon changed with the phenomenon as he interacted with it. Became like Steve had talked about. Began to accept this is an all-encompassing thing. The things we think aren't related, to it. Like I think Bigfoot, ghosts, all these things are intertwined into something we don't understand. He was under the impression, I think, unto the point that he passed, that it was pretty dark, some pretty dark shit. And he's not the only one. There's quite a few people that are up either in the, I know there's some people, I have a couple sources in the government that actually talk about that's some of the stuff they take seriously. So Gnosticism, things like that as well. So there's lots of people that think that way. And I don't know if it changed much, but the more you investigate it, for example, Masquerade of Angels, so you get that book, check it out. It's a pretty dark place, right? So there's several books by the same author. He's a doctor.
Carla Turner.
Thank you, Carla Turner. So some of those books there. And then Preston Dennett, though, on the other side, he's got some books, healings of UFOs, right? And you can go through some collected issues of different newsletters and stuff, and there's some crazy stuff that they talk about and through all of this. My biggest thing is the reason I like Keel, he talks about the super spectrum or EM spectrum, whatever you want to call it. That would explain lots of injuries, things like that. And it would also explain why some people see one thing, other people's can't. It's all part of that, being able to manipulate that, which our brains are also connected to, which the eighth tower is technically like some, let's say not necessarily Gaia, but some super hive mind type thing we're all connected to the EM spectrum. And these things, as they change through, which, energy, whatever you want to call it, that's what we're seeing. And that's why they vary and experiences vary. They can manipulate us, have us see and do what we want. Keel also talks about it a lot too, because Fort says, don't believe what you see. Hell, it's a trance. They can make you see, do, experience everything they want. And you're going to come away with something and tell exactly what they want you to say. So who knows, right? I have zero clue. All I know is shit's here. I don't have to believe in anything. I experience the shit every day. Shit, when I was down in Roswell, I CE5 and experienced it with Toby and them. So it's not about believing. It's just about I don't understand. And the more I read about it, the more I'm like, what the hell? I really don't understand. Who is up next?
I think I was. I was trying to. It wasn't working. I think, and it would work for a while, and then it would stop, and I was, so anyway, yeah, it's a crazy windy here. So anyway, great space, everybody. Good job. Great questions. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're a little, I guess you'd say volume needs to come up a little bit. But Steve, hey, I sent you another invite. You accept it, it'll bring you up to speak.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah, that's better, Jamie. Thank you.
Hey, real quick, Shane, if you could relay in case Steve can't hear me still. I shot him an email just in case or what. I told him he may need to try to exit the space and come back or accept or request a mic or whatever. If you could just relay that in case he can't hear either me or Logan. And then if we get him back up here, we'll probably just finish up the couple hands we have and then wrap it up.
All right. Hey, I'm passing on to you, Steve, because I don't think you can hear screen and UFO Shane. So you may have to actually leave the space, quit this app, and come back in real quick. And then I'll send you the invite to refresh it. He sent you an email kind of telling you how, but I'll explain it right here. And we're going to end it with these last 3 hands that we got up for you. So if you want to come back, and that'd be cool. Hopefully we can get you back in. And I appreciate you coming. Lots of informative stuff. This is my kind of space.
Yeah, I saw Buddy squeezing in there. I had to, Buddy gets grandfathered in, and everybody else, sorry, it's just the space is bugging out. It's we might, we're still not even sure if we'll get him back in here yet. So he's in here, is just having trouble getting to the mic. But y'all are killing it with the questions. Appreciate it. If y'all can hear me, I hope y'all can hear me.
Hey,
I can hear you, Screen.
yeah, we can hear you. And also, guys, do me a favor.
Okay, cool.
Get some tickets to the Roswell Incident Festival in July. Go to the website. I'll put that in here. I'll be speaking there. There'll be some cool stuff. Actually, a bunch of people from UFO Twitter, and Colonel Alexander's going to be talking. I can't wait to meet and talk to him, right? So, and look forward to some more stories from Toby and myself for the Roswell Daily Record as we go to these events and talk to some of these people and ask a lot of these questions. So if you got questions you want me to ask anybody, put them in here and who they go to, and I'll do that if they're cool questions.
So what happened was Steve opened his own space, and I went into his space, and I could hear him listening to you guys. But when he was answering inside of his space. So he has to be sent a request for this and brought back up. I I was like trying to get his attention in his room. So yeah, it's just a miscommunication on how spaces function.
That's the first I've ever heard that before. That's wild. So Garrett down there, he said Keel concluded that in 67 we may have a slim chance at hope, and that we are crying out to the cosmos for help. Like that's what Garrett down there said.
Hey, good point.
And he said we should check out the Tom DeLonge interview with his old roommate Benji Weatherly.
That normal evolution the mind goes to, like, oh my God, through grief, and all of a sudden cry out to God. That's the only way for help. Like you just said, Tom DeLonge, lots of people go to that. I'm telling you, this is no joke. My experience is still going to the point that I have no way of being an agnostic. I'm being atheist. I'm not even agnostic to the point, and that's all I'm going to say about it. Chris Bledsoe, I can see how people go that direction with experiences. Is everybody here still? I know is
Yeah,
that a
I'm
mic
still
drop
here.
moment and I didn't know it? I thought that was just kind of,
No,
damn, I'm good,
I
huh?
was trying to think of a solution. Mr. Mera, if you can hear us,
It cut out.
He's
I
he's
know that
requested. We're
you're.
bringing him up now.
Yay! Okay, good.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Sorry about Twitter, Elon, and the spaces. It was probably just a little bit UFO Shane's fault too. Probably just a little bit UFO Shane's fault too.
You okay, guys? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, wonderful.
Close your other space.
Awesome. Are we good to go?
Yep.
Oh, hey, Steve, do you still have another space open?
No, I closed it and opened a new one.
Are we good to go? Oh, hey, Steve, do you still have another space? Hold on, I'm trying to figure out how we can.
No, I closed.
Oh, hold on 1 second. Let me try to mute your mic and then unmute it and see if this works.
Well, now that he's up as speaker, he should be able to close the space he has running. If he hits the leave button in the top right corner, but not for this space, for the one where it's just him sitting there. If he leaves that,
How
it
does
should.
he have two spaces? How does he have a space going in here?
No idea. He's awesome. It's the phenomena.
It's because
That's
he logged
magic.
in on his computer. On his he logged into the space on his computer. Probably he's using the phone for this. Probably.
Okay. Steve, does that make sense? Do you have the space open on your desktop as well?
Yeah, hang on.
The quantum follows him.
Is that
the quantum?
Yeah.
He's got Twitter Spaces quantum entangled.
Quantum entanglement on the Twitter. Yeah.
Twitter hitchhiker effect.
How's that sound, guys? Can you hear me okay?
Sounds amazing.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think we can all hear each other again too. The dang Twitter bugs. Sometimes they get us at the worst times, I swear.
Can you hear me, Steve? Can you hear me, Steve?
Yeah.
Oh, great. I'll try asking this the third time.
Logan, go ahead with
Hopefully
the question,
it'll come
bud. You've been.
The Kadiputainment. Have you heard about that work from Gary Nolan, where the Kadiputainment is a little overactive in certain individuals, and these certain individuals seem to be attracted to one another for who knows what reason? They get married, they have kids or whatever, and these people are brought together in too many times for it to be coincidental. So, do you think the phenomena is pushing these certain individuals closer together for some reason, and why do you think they would? And also, what do you think about crash retrievals? Do you think that's really happening?
Okay, so the first question, yeah, I have noted that. It's quite interesting what Gary says. A lot more work is required before we actually conclude on that, though, unfortunately. I mean, Gary said a few things. I mean, it was talk of white matter syndrome, brain syndrome, which was mentioned about people who have had experience of phenomena are somehow affected on the brain, and it says these little white patches, and there were brain scans done on them, and it was stuff like that. But I checked into it, and it's not all correct actually from some of the stuff that was said. So, the problem lies in real good research and long-term studies. I mean, you know what? We could always say there's certain things that, beyond chance that, that people come together. It happens all the time. So yeah, there could be something to it, but then are we talking about that situation where the simulated reality we live in is somehow manipulated to some degree by something. It could just fall under that. The problem is when you suddenly come up with conclusions like that, is where on earth do you find the data to confirm it? It's next to impossible.
Hey, real quick, I saw you mentioned white matter, and I saw my girl B up in here. So, B, what you got to say about that? Because I've heard the first place I ever heard that was out of your mouth.
Yeah, I actually just went back for another MRI yesterday. The morphology is real. It's still ongoing, and it's also, I think, it's genetic, and it coincides with this with experience in this phenomena. I actually had my daughter when she back in 2018 when she was 22 out with me, or she was 20 at the time actually, and we experienced, like, even my profile picture is this light, right? Just this plasmic type of stuff that shows up. But I've been seeing it and experiencing it long enough that I've done experiments with people and documented them enough to the point that I know without a doubt that the reflective stuff that Keel and you and others are talking about, that there's some kind of quantum entrapment that's going on.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
my
I mean,
kid, but
I agree. There's evidence of that. The problem lies is when you break it down and fundamentally start looking at what the parts are, the parts that create those conditions lie within all of us. That's where the study has to lie. Is what is creating the change for it to cause that effect.
well, now there's some of it. Now the caudate, there's a beefiness. There's neuronals that there's neurons that shear with the white matter displacement, but there's also a rebuilding, neuroplasticity with more neurons, transmitters between the head and the tail at the caudate, but it's also widespread throughout the brain because it's a re-functioning of dealing with whatever this is. But I believe part of that as well in that same neuronal structure, some of that relies and puts stress upon our ocular nerves. So even the differences in our neuronal structures could be a baseline factor for why two people, like my husband and I, standing in the same place, see two different things. We see something, but our representation of it is different, but I agree with you. More studies need to be done. But I did want to harken back to my first question. The reason I asked you that is that my brother Sir Shane up here, old vet, and our friend Astro down here, they are working proactively, amazingly with UAP Medical Coalition. And I know that you said just what you said in your parapsychological research, with the area changing and making people tired and dizzy. Like that would be pertinent data for that organization to have. So I'm really looking forward to seeing your interview with Shane and hope to hear more about that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we really need to. The problem is that I get invited to go and be part of all sorts of different things and involved with different organisations and establishments. But the problem is, I need to see that they have a good representation of parapsychology and a good understanding of that, because this is where a lot of it's going to lie. And fundamentally, you've got a lot of people. I mean, it's the ones I've been involved with. Some of them are really good, but they are lacking areas in that field, because we've got lots of specialists and radar people and doctors and physicists and all sorts of things. We need that element to come in, because there's a void there of understanding, and that void of understanding is found in those other areas of research. You just don't know it. And I've been frustrated many times about it, and it is a difficult situation, because not everybody's comfortable, because when you start getting into the paranormal and that side of thing, people seem to think it's less scientific than the UAP, and they don't want to get it too heavily involved. Well, I can tell you now from the start, I've been involved in the higher ends of experiments in parapsychology, and it is far from anything but non-scientific. and what we've discovered and what we know is happening, and how it applies itself to the UAP phenomena. That area needs significant study for them to gain a foothold of understanding of what they're dealing with, because they've only got half the information in the hand. The other half lies in these other areas. And once they start putting it all together, like we've done, because this is what Project Doorway was designed to do, is utilize every single area of human knowledge to understand what we're dealing with. And that's not done. And it's never been done before in the past when we had scientific evaluations of a UFO phenomena. It was never done. No parapsychologists were ever involved. The Project Blue Book officers, when they went out to talk to people, so and tell me about the UFO you saw. Well, I can tell you about the UFO, but isn't it strange that the following week I had poltergeist phenomena? Oh no, don't tell us about that ghosty stuff. We don't want it. Let's just stick to the story about the UFO, please. It was happening back then in the days of Project Blue Book, and it's, they've formulated a plan that, generally it might be just because they wanted to keep the public away from the whole aspect's knowledge. And because once you do that and enter into that field, you start to realize, hang on a second, we can get a clearer picture here of what's actually happening, and through those the ball manifestation in the paranormal, for an example, is made up of certain things which is measurable. Those are measurable now through specialized equipment on the UAP phenomena, because we have structured craft flying around. But what we also have is, what people aren't going to be saying, is we have intelligent light forms. Intelligent light forms. These are intelligent as if they're some type of living thing, but they're just a ball of light. We often see them as droppers. We have nicknamed them droppers because they drop a lot of these small little ones, and they seem to manifest slowly and then they disappear, as if they never existed. And there's a line of them dropping from these objects regularly near military bases. I've got military footage of them, of a missile hitting two of them, and all they did is just reform. They came all apart and then just came back together again. And these things are something else in our atmosphere. We've not only got these balls of light which are intelligent and doing strange things, but we also have structured crafts and occupants as well. So we've got two different varied things we have to look at under the banner of UAP now, and that has to be broken down.
Wow. Thank you so much. I had a question. I thought you've worked with Nazca lines. I thought the story of Maria was super fascinating. I was really sad with how it turned out. But when referring to the mound culture, the Native Americans who practice with the mound culture, specifically the serpent mound, what do you think or know about them and how they interact with the phenomenon?
I would go back a long time, a real long time. Serpent worship, serpent mounds, and things like that. We've seen a lot of them in America and other places, but they were much more common. The serpent worship is intrinsically through all ancient sites around the world. There's some references of them all over the place. We still brought those references into modern times now, because there's still some part of us that thinks we should still worship some aspects of serpents. It was something that was very common years and years back, more so as serpent worship. But then that also had its blood worship as well in serpent worship. That was one of the first ones, actually, serpent worship. It's still there. It's just clouded under different masks, because a lot of secret societies have just utilized the best elements of certain things and called it something new. Then there are a lot of those, and they're usually for the gentry, the folks with the high money and the high placements and that sort of thing, are having a lot of involvements in those type of societies. But the mounds, the serpent. Again. They were associated to the rising and the setting sun still, even back on the serpent mounds of North America. The the method in that is because of the terahertz frequency coming from the sun, because the terahertz frequency only derives from the sun during sunset and sunrise, and because it's passing through so much atmosphere of the Earth that it filters out everything else. So you only end up with terahertz frequency. Only happens twice a day, if weather permitting, of course. And of course, you'll note that a lot of ancient sites were lined to the setting and the rising of sun on certain times of the year, equinox and solstice. But what we realized is what people didn't get is that, these certain chambers, resonant chambers, and certain temples and places, which were devised to be built to communicate with the deities or the gods. The methodology behind that is a double lock system. Yeah, because a lot of people have been going in there and trying to create the right om. First of all, you need to know what the resonant chamber resonates at. For instance, these ones in Ireland which resonate at 110 hertz, which is interesting, because what that does, it actually it speeds up the wounds. If you have physical wounds on the body, it speeds up the healing process 110 hertz, as well as other things as well. So they have certain frequencies, and they were built to design and to do so. But there are ones which are designed for something else, and these are for communicating through the veil to the others, and that's happened all around the world. But that double lock system introduces, what happens is when you go into these locations, you'll see that there's certain areas where out of the middle area that people would sit out of that in the sides, and they would be the ones that create the om. There would be numerous different mantras, some of which aren't even capable of doing so now, because we don't have the vocal cords for some of them, and would have taken years to manufacture, to expertly produce these certain types of mantras. Anyway, these ohms resonate at a certain frequency, which in tune with the resonant chamber, and then we'll need the light, which is another frequency. So you use two frequency lock system. The frequency of light has to pass through the chambers, which is a terahertz frequency. You apply a terahertz frequency with your own frequency, and some strange stuff starts to happen. Barry's had recording devices in there, and we hear sounds coming from the other side, not this side. Drum beat, rock movements, and things like that. It's not coming from our side, it's coming from the other side. So we know there's a double lock system that's involved in some of these ancient sites. And a terahertz frequency, the very same terahertz frequency, is produced in auric fields around UFOs, funny enough, measured at Hasdalen in Norway. We've got paperwork on that. The same frequency that's coming from an implant in the terahertz frequency. So terahertz frequency, there's some significance about it in a lot of different areas associated with this subject.
That was an amazing answer. Thank you so much.
Yeah, the terahertz frequency stuff is crazy. And I know it's getting late over there for you, Steve. Appreciate your time. We'll get through these last couple questions real quick for you. I don't know who was next. If y'all can go off the honor system for me.
Okay, I just was waiting since earlier, so if I could get that would be great. Okay. So it's very interesting and wonderful space. Thank you so much. And I earlier was having trouble with the audio, and I could all of a sudden couldn't hear you, and then or couldn't hear a screen or whatever, and so I had to go in and out several times and close the app. And anyway, finally, I was hearing part of what you were saying about like implants and how they were made out of something that they could see on the x-rays, and then they started making it out of something else. And I have a family member who had mentioned to me about how there's something in their jaw that the dentist had noticed, and they don't know what it is. And it's been there for years. And just wondering if would be something like that. Like, is that similar? Because I've heard somebody pointed out to me at the UFO Expo that there was some other people there, and one of them had found something in their jaw, and I wasn't sure if it was her, so I didn't go up and ask, so I was embarrassed. I don't know, shy, I guess.
Funny enough, the implants can be in all sorts of places. Funny, I've heard them from being in the foot. to being in the head. Any place really, they can be in certain different places, including the jaw. Yeah, I'm aware of that. Is this a person that's had experiences or aware of that she's had experiences? Just curious.
Well, they have had some of the experiencer, like I've had 20 out of 34 of the super experiencer list of Chris Bledsoe's list that Astral got a slide when he was at one of the conventions over there. And so, yeah, there's been like things that move in the house, you know. She called me on a video one night. Babe, can you turn that down, please?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry about that. That's better. And so she showed me on her phone this bag that was sitting there moving, and it just moved itself up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down a whole bunch of times, you know, and we were like, okay. And so and you know, she does have an alien tattoo. So, and I've remember experience, my husband and I are experiencers. I have body marks, like, you know, I used to get nosebleeds as a child. I haven't really researched anything into that, but I did notice some particular marks on the backs of my husband's arms one time. And he didn't know how he got them
Yeah,
either.
those things are common, unfortunately. Yeah, I know. You know, foreign things get into the body, you know, all the time, but they don't stay in there for long. You know, because the body has a natural way of repelling these things, and if it doesn't repel it, it attacks it. So therefore, you should get swelling, you should get redness, even itching, or even pain from whilst the body is in attack mode against a foreign item in the body. When they don't, that's when it becomes interesting, because the implants have a film around them which allows them to mask themselves genetically. So the body is fooled into thinking it's actually something from the body. So therefore, our own natural system doesn't attack it. Very cleverly, actually done. Very clever. But it is that skin. Can I say this? Yeah, I think I can. That particular skin that is found microscopically around implants is being taken off implants and is being looked at and analysed now, because we're realising is that if we can manufacture that process, that skin, that means that we'll never have somebody who repels a donor. Because we have that all the time, you know. Oh, you know, with heart transplants, that they didn't work because they didn't, you know, the donor didn't accept it, you know, and we'd never have that ever, that issue. And science is working on that right at this minute to try and replicate that skin, that film that goes around, to see what and how it works. So, you know, there are certainly key areas of study here, which is going to be interesting. But it's just, I would only say, you know, only deal with it if it's a problem. If it's for your friend, if it's a problem. People have done a number of things. Active ones do a number of things. They can be producing an RF signal in some cases, a frequency, or they can pick up an electromagnetic meter and place it to the location to see if there was any trigger. Anything that quivers, anything from 2 to 9 Gauss will be interesting to see, because, you know, you shouldn't really have anything that's producing that in the body, you know. But and normally, though, I would say in some cases, if there's not any problems, then leave it be. You know, because I've heard of people who have had these and they've not been a problem, and they tried to go for extraction. The object has seemingly relocated, and then they started having experiences again they didn't really want. So, you know, I would say only if it's a real initial problem that, you know, then deal with it and look at that. Yeah.
Awesome. Appreciate the advice. That's cool. You know, implants, where do you really get advice for stuff like that, right? Let's see. JJ.
You can let Alien Protocols go first.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Steve, for all of your work. You know, if this field needs anything, it's like research with integrity, and you know, you bring that to the masses, which is so important. So bless you for that. There seems to be an opinion amongst practitioners of psi, experiencers, and a lot of the leading researchers, and even aerospace executives, that there's a connection between all of these. It's all connected. Like there may be a field that we're missing, you know, 200 years ago, there was a bunch of phenomena, and Volta helped to unite it. All this strange, different phenomena, like really creepy stuff, from zapping to animals' arms moving. And 200 years later, we couldn't imagine living without the electromagnetic field. There seems to be, and I'm a strong believer in the real physics of this stuff. And do you feel that practitioners should help in this stuff? If this is dealing with very fundamental, incredibly powerful forces of creation and transmutation, you look at Hutchinson case. I've been blessed to work with different, groups, and people in here would vouch for my storied history. But do you think it's a good thing? Do you think we should be finding out? We can tell it's very powerful, incredibly powerful. Can we handle this?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, I can tell you from my point of view, from parapsychology departments around the world, they will stipulate that there is. I'll give you an example. They'll stipulate that there's no evidence of afterlife. Okay, and they'll draw a line on that, and that's put that to bed. The reasons why they do that is really not gone into, because they don't like to tell people why and how they came to the conclusion. But the conclusions is based on experiments. Those experiments, they know that they communicate regularly with intelligent voices, which tell them things. But because we know the phenomena can read the thoughts of those experimenters, then the information that's given could be simply through the probing of their minds, and they're given exactly what they expect to hear. We know this because they've answered questions prior to be given given the question. They've answered them prior to even us opening our mouths and asking. So they've obtained the information from the sitters. So that's a real problem. And we know that deception is very high, very high in these experiments with these voices of these entities or whatever they claim to be. So because of the deception, and because of them being able to give you and tell you exactly what you expect to hear, then we cannot prove an afterlife. Because you could say, well, you know what, I've been conversing with my father who passed away 3 years ago. But how do you know it's your father? Well, because he only knows what he only tells me things. He says things that my father would only know, that I'd know. Well, of course, but the phenomena can get that from you. It knows everything about your father because it knows you, and it knows what your thoughts are. And this is how manipulative that phenomena can be. So it's impossible. It turned out that it was impossible to confirm that afterlife could exist, because we can't prove it. It could all be deception. Whoever these things are, we just do not know. If they are legitimate and they are your past family members, then that's fantastic, but we will never know. And this is the problem. And they can also manifest, as we've known in the past. There's been manifestations of people that thought to be dead and we weren't. So it's a phenomenon that's produced it because the people in the environment thought that was the case. So because of so much deception, we can't rule that. And this is the problem regarding these scientific establishments. They don't want to go forward because we can't seem to win that section. So we'll never, no matter what, we will never prove there's an afterlife. That unfortunately closes the book on that, because it's impossible knowing what their capabilities are to do so. And this is why a lot of them don't get involved. A lot of scientists don't tend to come forward because, a lot of these things are still classed as pseudoscience, but I mean, so was physics at one time until it became more fundamentally needed and unknown and understood. It's a problem, but then you know what? There are those people that at those hierarchy levels that don't want that to progress in a certain direction, because if we do, and we all know, then there's too much equilibrium, and we've got to have a divide in society, because that is the way we've been taught to behave and how we have a hierarchy process in society. If we didn't, it was equilibrium, then we'd have to figure out a whole way of living with each other, I think.
Thank you so much.
So, Stephen, are you basically saying there's no afterlife? There's nothing beyond this physical reality? And concerning this physical reality, are we just like terabytes in a program? Is this experience just what we call God or the source experiencing itself? If so, and if we just die once our experience is over or our use is over. Another thing is you can't negate NDEs and people coming back and stating they've seen the doctors performing on them. They go to a place and they're told things, unless that also is of the same thing you're speaking of, the phenomena, which you seem to characterize it as sort of evil and tricky. And also, yeah, if you can answer those, I
Yeah,
have other
yeah,
questions.
sure. I mean, my personal views on these matters is definitely something beyond death. There's enough evidence to support in the NDE program, anyway, and many of them, that that is true. There is something, but we don't know how long that process is. How long is the NDE process for? According to most of the documentation that's covered around the world, there seems to be what you call the introductory level, when obviously you suddenly realise that you died and you're aware that you have died in some conscious manner. Beyond that, you'll say people will see tunnels of light. Not everybody does, but somebody do. Some of them enter the void, which is like a waiting. It's like a waiting station where there isn't really anything for a short period of time. But there is something, and that means that consciousness carries over, because the consciousness is something separate. I mean, we have spirit, we have soul, we have consciousness. It also gets heavily involved in regarding how we are influenced by these things, because they always come from the back. They always come from inwards, into the back of people. These influences by outside forces, entities, whatever you want to call them, but they can do that when people are weak, or even close to death. And what basically happens is it's the same for young children as well. Because young children are, when they see slightly different than when we do, they have a slightly wider spectrum, and of course are more coherent in regarding things in those realities than we are until we get to a certain age and we lose that function. But some people still carry it on and become more attuned, you could say, intuitionally. But I would basically argue, I have to say, yes, it would be hardlined saying that there is no proof of afterlife. There may be proof of the near-death experience. We know that. We know there's enough evidence to say, yes, there's something. But is that our lack of understanding of our consciousness? I mean, how long does the consciousness survive beyond physical death? That's the question, and that's the important issue where we want to get to. How long does consciousness survive? And don't, people working on consciousness, because, they've always wanted to cap it, bottle it in some way. And if we can do, then people could live forever, in the sense of speaking. But we're trying to work out, but as far as we know, it's not something of a physical nature. But we really don't know how long consciousness survives a physical death. And if it does last for a long period of time, what happens? What is that process? Is it an afterlife? It's really unknown. But this is why the scientists won't underline and say there's evidence of afterlife, because they're aware of the deception. They're aware that there's no real way to prove it, apart from saying, well, you know what, there's a space between death and nothingness that consciousness survives, because people have memory of NDEs. So it is a very, very tricky business.
My other question is the Greys. They often have messages for people regarding the earth, taking care of the earth, polluting the earth. It seems as if, do you believe that they are our creators? Do you believe that we are a creation of another species from another another planet. First, let's better way of putting it.
Yeah, I understand the question. I
Yeah.
would say this. Yeah, I absolutely believe that human species is manufactured. I know that from doing many years of study in regarding anti-Darwinism, and even Darwinism. Tried to stamp that forward, but even he thought, that's why it's called the Darwin theory. Because it's a theory, and he wasn't even convinced himself. The fact is that as time's gone on, we're realizing how far it is from the truth. But there's been interaction, and at one time, when President Bush Jr. was in office as president, he was contemplating bringing intelligent design, the teaching of intelligent design, into schools, because he was an ardent believer of it. He believed that we've been created by some super beings in some way, but not really super beings, because we're getting there ourselves. Where will we be in 100, 200 years time? We might be able to genetically create a person perfectly like that in ourselves, and are we become the gods? We are slowly but surely, the advancements in technology, and it's growing so fast, becoming godlike, and it is quite scary. But I truly believe we are manufactured the way we are because of some type of intelligent design. It's been not just been going on a long time ago, but probably still continuing today. And isn't that exactly what we're seeing when we hear about the alien hybrid phenomena and genetic tests that these entities have been doing, taking skin samples and and all these different tests? It sounds to me this has been an ongoing thing, and it's still going on. I don't know where it will finish. Maybe we need to evolve to the next level. I don't know if it's down to their involvement, but we haven't gone through the normal genes of evolution. That's one thing for sure. We've took a skip and a hop, and we've had helping hands on the way. And we've seen where it's not worked very well, because those things are hide and hidden away, like giants with 6 fingers, with 2 rows of teeth, and those things that shouldn't have existed on the evolutionary chain. So yeah, it seems like we've been experimented on. I totally believe that. Yeah, absolutely.
It was that's an amazing answer. It was so validating to hear you talk about the fusion at chromosome 2. I'm sorry, chromosome 2. Astral?
Yeah, fusion of chromosome 2. Yeah, that did actually take place. You can see it genetically. There was an experiment. There's a proper program that was carried out on regards the study of chromosome 2. And what's happened is that there's been splicing of 2 genetic strands of DNA together. Now, if you look at the DNA of a chimpanzee and the DNA of us, it's clearly, you can see it. You can clearly, what makes us a big difference is that there's this splicing, and that can't take place normally through evolution. It has to be done, scientifically. But we don't know when it was done. Just like we don't know where rhesus negative blood comes from and why it's associated to so many people that have experiences from the Basque region. It originated, but we don't know how. It just formulates there, and that's it. There are lots of mysteries genetically regarding the human body we're still trying to figure out.
Yeah, the fusion is in our ancestral DNA, so that's why I've always been convinced this is something ancient and always been here. Just because in order to do the fusion, you'd have to do it scientifically. But I want to hear Astral's question. I'll stop talking about chromosome 2, but if anybody hasn't looked into it, look into it.
Hey, what's up? I have a parapsychology question for Steve. I feel like there's been a separation, whether intentional or not, from parapsychology and ufology. And you alluded to it earlier, and I feel as this way, as there's a lot more of credible science and data that's out there, whether you're looking at like ESP or just like what Ryan did and all the parapsychologists, and even the establishment of like their journals with the Journal of Parapsychology and peer-reviewed stuff. But I also feel, and Leslie Keene made this point in a symposium that had parapsychologists there, they were confused sort of why UFO field or ufology sort of leapfrogged them in the past 5 or 6 years since 2017. And Keen mentioned that it was basically journalism. Ufology didn't do anything in terms of science, that it was basically journalism and a way that they got the information out to the New York Times. And I wondered, a two-part question, do you feel like there's going to be a fusion back or an acknowledgement from parapsychology to sort of fuse together with ufology? Do you see the future? How do you see the future of parapsychology? Do you see it more as like getting into the psi stuff, or because I feel like it's sort of a little bit in the past, like stuck 25, 30 years ago? And, like Dean Radin sort of tried to get everybody to start talking like psi, but everybody's still kind of like referencing parapsychology. Like, why do you feel like the field is a little bit behind?
Great question. I would say, initially I thought, there was a purpose separation, a compartmentalization, because they're all, when we start to find these things, we also have to consider the advancements, and people who are a lot more clever than I am would have maybe figured this out some time ago. So, we're always playing catch up, on the non-academic side of military, so we say, we're just general folk, and we're always going to be behind their resources and their intelligence. So first things first is that they probably would have known. So I do research into that area, and I find that, they were looking into magnetic anomalies and associated to UAP manifestation in 1982. That's some time ago, and I'm bringing it forward 6 years ago with Barry for the first time. And people started going, okay, well, let's do some checking ourselves. They realize, okay, there's definitely something to this. It gets picked up, goes through a scientific establishment. They say, yes, we're also aware of this. We like you. We like your ideas. We like Project Doorway. We want you to join our think tanks and stuff like that. And of course, I don't see too many parapsychologists in there, but they do need to be involved. So moving forward, it's absolutely an authoritative figures in parapsychology have to be involved. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And they have to decompartmentalize everything, even cryptids, because we know that there's elements of that associatable as well. So, so many things, and they've got to look at the whole picture when it comes to things like this. So they have to involve them. I am only aware of a handful that do involve parapsychological research. And I tell you where the way forward is. It's advanced conscious studies. That's the way forward, advanced consciousness studies, because we know consciousness is tied in with all of the above.
Thank you for that, Steve.
Thank you, man.
Let's get over it. Hey, Asheville, good question, by the way. I'll let you. Oh, you got a space later, everybody. So everybody check that out later. He's the yellow envelope guy. So B will get to you, and then it's late over there. He's probably ready to get out of here and rest his brain.
Were you telling me to go ahead?
Yeah, B.
Awesome. Sorry, Steve. Thank you so much for coming out and talking to us. I'm fascinated to learn more. I have a question for Parapsychology Over the Pond. I shared a couple of links up above. I just became aware of Beverly Rudick, PhD. She was on Jeffrey Mishlove, who I'm sure you're familiar with, and she was talking about biofield energy. And the bioelectric field that human thought emotions emit, and talking about the studies that they did on that, is parapsychology. I know you were talking about their need to collaborate with other fields. Exactly. Do you see the cross connections yet of the biophoton world with that?
Ah, yes. Yeah, actually, the Russians really in there. The Russians were the first ones to sort of really develop into all that area of research quite heavily. Yes, I am aware of it. I'm aware of the studies, and aware of the some of the things that have been documented. It is intriguing. There is definite correlation between the human biofield and phenomena. We know that. It's been measurable. We're also aware of how phenomena is also how can I put this? It's identifying a pheromone. The fear pheromone is identifiable through the phenomenon as well. So the phenomenon knows how to induce the fear pheromone. It can track it and smell it, in the sense of speaking. Now, scientists said, argued the point with me, is that it's an old thing that we don't have anymore. We don't have the mechanism anymore to smell pheromones like other animals do. Of human pheromones, and I argued the point. Well, no, actually, if you actually look at the studies, and they did do studies. We did studies of people which were parachuting for the first time, and we did also people playing basketball, and we had sweat glands, which were they were taking sweat from the sweat glands on the people that are jumping off the plane for the first time, or the people who are playing basketball, and they got all mixed up. But the fear pheromone was identifiable through people. It could smell fear. So we still have the capabilities of it. Just they're just ignorant and said no, it doesn't exist anymore. That's not true. And we know the phenomenon tags people and identifies people with certain biofields as well. There are some people which are electrohypersensitive as well. So there's a lot of different things. Nothing is random. I'll tell you that. If anybody's having experiences out there, and I said it's nothing is random. Everything is a mechanics. Everything. And this is why we refer to as paranormal mechanics. It covers the lot, and that's done through the head parapsychological research that's required in the area of UAP studies. So yeah, it's a really good question. I'm aware of it. There's lots more to it. It's involved. But as soon as you start getting in there, you start to realize there's certain patterns to certain people's biofield, and certain people have certain types of experiences. So it's quite interesting.
Yes, sir. Actually, Beverly Rudick, PhD, I do implore you. He just re-released it yesterday or the day before yesterday. That biofield energy, and it's not happenstance that you mentioned Russia either, because she actually spoke of the technology that can track these biosignatures of emotions, cognitive emotions, and intent. And Russia is making that equipment, but also DARPA's NEAT program with their cognitive sciences are also hearkening back to that as well, because they've also got their studies showing that biophotons carry qualia and are the base of psi and even remote healing.
Exactly. Yes, it is. Fundamentally, if you dig deep enough, you're going to hit paranormal sources. That's what they always used to say to me, and it's actually quite true.
Well, yeah. I mean, bacteria was woo before we had the microscope, and then we got the microscope. Then it was scary as hell because we saw it and it was scary. But then we figured it out, right? So, this is just the new bacteria. We'll figure it out. Thank you so much for coming in, and I won't keep you anymore with any questions, but I will extend the invite and hope that my brother UFO Shane up there can help get that scheduled up sometime to get you in for a Wednesday roof chat some night.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Awesome. Before we close out real quick, Steve, I got a couple things I wanted to run by you. Let's see, where do I start, man? Like I said, Project Doorway. It's really doing what we should be doing. It covers so much. It's like you talk about.
It's been
Sorry,
good.
go ahead.
We're still working on it. It's still progressive. We did 6 years into Project Doorway now, and it's progressive. It's getting very interesting, but we had to open certain doors to get into it and stuff. But we had to wait on certain equipment because it just wasn't blooming made. That's the problem. We had to wait for it, and finally we managed to get some of the equipment for the very first time. Displacement meters, time displacement. You don't just lay your hands on one of them very easily. But the thing is with doing that project is that it's an ongoing thing, and just like most people out there, I was fed up with just another stone to the mountain we've got. I don't want another photo. I don't want another video. I don't want all these different hypotheses about where they're coming from. It's been 70 odd years, if not longer. I'm sick of the American government turning around and saying, well, we haven't got a clue after 70 years. Well, if they haven't, nobody's got any chance. And I thought to myself, well, no, because the whole point of this is it advanced the subject. because I want the younger generation to be able to pick up on this, not where we left off in the 1940s, to pick up from it from now and what we learn. So it's advancing the subject, and this is, I think, the Project Doorways is quite unique in its way that it's quite happily open the areas to the paranormal where so many people fear to tread, to be honest with you, and I don't know why. But I'm glad you've recognised Project Doorway for exactly for what it means.
Yeah, it's really my favorite, my go-to, and that way it's a good intro for people too. You know, like this goes all the way back to the phenomena with the different masks goes all the way back to the Aboriginals in Australia with the Wandjina, and they say it's the sky people that comes from dream time. Well, that sounds like consciousness and aliens to me, pretty much. So it's like it's just been going on forever and ever. And then you hear, you talk about the aversion to iron and all the similarities, and like there's certain ways we can protect ourselves, which I thought that was pretty cool. You mentioned some places used hematite around the doors and windows or whatever. Because where I'm from, we have the Gola people. They came from the Caribbean. They put indigo around the doors and windows, and that was something I learned when I was growing up and never knew. But we have a bunch of orbs around here and stuff like that. I actually got in touch with John Burroughs after the TR3B sighting, and he told me that consciousness was the new weapon, and that these TR3Bs are basically operating off of AI and conscious control, and some even have consciousness uploaded to them.
I'm aware of a number of projects which have been going on since the early 1980s in association to biological. How I came into that is that when I left school, I became an engineer, and after a while of becoming an engineer, I went to work for NATO in Essex in the UK, where I became a telecommunications officer. And after some years, I signed 2 Official Secrets Acts and was on a program with Marconi. Marconi and NATO were working together on a program, and I was inducted into it. And we were working with electronic computer boards which had biological circuits on them, and that was 28 years ago. So I know that I've had first hand of biological circuitry. I've seen it, I've seen liquid bioplasma cells, for memory, and they're a lot better than your normal memory cells that you find in a computer. But here there was me thinking, well, we're all going to be out in the next 10 years, and 28 years later, we're still waiting. I totally agree with you. There are things out there which are pilotless. Some of them are self-healing, nanotechnology. I think Lamborghini made one a few years ago. Just one car had a nanotechnology. Was made from nanotechnology metal. So when you punched a hole into it, it would actually rebuild the hole. Very clever stuff. You can find stuff on the internet about that. And of course, with nitinol, advanced nitinol, which is little like the 1947 Roswell stuff, where it's memory metal, So, and I know that they've got advanced nitinol now as well. So, and they've had that for quite some time. But yeah, there are biological things which can basically fly, utilizing, I believe, consciousness, because there's always intrinsically, and we tried to fit AI. I mean, we had a rat brain flying an F-232 or something like that in 1982, I think, 1983, and he did it quite complimentally. He did it reasonably well. It was just a rat brain that flew the aircraft simulations perfectly. So we know that consciousness can fly these things. That was 82. So we consider where we are now. Then I'd assume we definitely have something like that.
Oh man, that you said it best. That was 82. That's what I always try to put in perspective for people. The thing I saw 2 years ago was still the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life, straight out of Star Wars. And you're talking about some from 82. Imagine what they have out there. I'm a real big fan of the X points and electron diffusion regions and stuff. And personally, I think that's what the Anunnaki man bags picture. But that the stuff we're going to see coming out with technology is just crazy. But I did want to ask you. I've heard you mention a app before.
Yes. Yeah, there are filters actually. I mean, you can utilize Google Maps for this, and you connect to a number of different satellites through the process of the filters. So basically, you would use a KMV filter for magnetic anomalies and a GRAV. It's called GAAV filter for the gravitational anomalies, and you can track these. Now, noted that they are like a heartbeat from morning to night. There's a little they expand and they detract and so on and so forth. Not so much, but enough to say a few miles backwards and forwards. When you start graphing it, and I keep saying to people, graph it. Don't take my word for it. You go look for it. We had people contacting me saying, Steve, oh my God, have you gone through all David Pallad's stuff? I said, why? He says, because all the disappearances are happening in the positive magnetic regions. I said, you figured it out finally, have you? I said, well, you know what? I've already talked to David about this. He knows. He's not daft. He's understanding. And that's why his last documentary was Missing 411, the UFO connection, because he didn't really want to go down that road. He's known it for quite some time. But it was only because of the more and more evidence that's pointing out that these locations where people are being taken profoundly are places of positive magnetic regions.
Yeah, actually, that reminded me. You're the only person that I know that's investigated a missing 411 inside of a home where the guy disappeared
That's right.
from inside the house.
That's right. Yeah, I was asked by the police force to be involved in that case because they had no clue. What was really interesting, though, fact is that this is the only one where he actually came back and then went again, because he disappeared for a short period of time, and then he returned from nowhere and with no knowledge of his disappearance or time reference to it. And then about a week later, he'd gone and he'd never returned. In fact, his wife, young child, and family, who she didn't work at the time, she had to get the family to help buy the house because she was determined that she was never going to leave that house in hope of a husband coming back. And to this day, he hasn't. And I think his child was 2 at the time. He's now in his 20s. So it's a sad story, but it's a very profound one.
Oh man, yeah, that one's tough. Oh, well, hey. Yeah, Steve, I really appreciate you spending all this time with us tonight. I know it's late over there, and I know the Twitter spaces are a little unorthodox, and I know we had some bugs, but I really enjoyed the conversation and getting all this information out to like regular people. That's like just trying to spread the information because that's like what we have to do, and you seem to be at the forefront of all that. Like, you've got everything all over YouTube, like we were talking about earlier with Zohar, UAMN, TV, Ancient Secret Discoveries, like literally all that stuff. You got a podcast, the e-magazine, you're doing it all.
When I first constructed all this work, I thought to myself, how am I going to get it out? So then I spent many years in finalizing and me being in control of being able to get the information out, rather than relying on somebody else. And I thought, well, the best way is through YouTube, it's through magazines, it's through TV shows, it's through those avenues. It's the best way I can get the information out. Because there has been occasions when I've had, should you say, certain people contact me to try to deter me to talk about from some certain things, but that just fuels the fire. Unfortunately, it's the worst thing to say to me. It just fuels the fire. I know I'm on the right track,
Oh yeah, man, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I know UFO Shane, he had a emergency. He had to leave real quick. His rabbit got loose, and coincidentally or synchronicity, whatever one you want to
Like
call
you
it,
do.
his rabbit's name is also Steve.
Who hasn't been in a space when their rabbit got out and they got to go chasing after it? I mean, it's happened to us all. What's up, Logan? We got to close this space here in a second so we can get going.
Oh, did you call?
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's go real quick. We're gonna close this
no,
up.
I don't basic one. That's cool.
Cool, guys. Hey,
Thanks though. Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming, brother.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, for coming. Hey,
Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, it was really good. If anybody wants to find out, they can find the magazine. It's free to download. You don't pay for it. It's the largest one in the world. It goes out to 12 countries, 4 languages. phenomenamagazine.co.uk. You can get it every month for free. It's just a matter of distributing information as we currently find stuff. Keep everybody in the loop. We've got UAMN TV on YouTube, which covers a lot of the UFO stuff that we deal with. Ancient Secret Mysteries, Zohar, Ancient Secret Mysteries, Zohar, Stargate. You'll find them all on YouTube there, guys. If you want to find my website, it's s_Mera. If my email's s_Mera@yahoo.com. My website for me personally is stevemera.com. I also run an organisation called MAPIT, Manchester Aerial Phenomena Investigation Team. That's been running since '74. So there's details up on there of investigations that we've done over the years. Basically, the best way is just Google Steve Mera. You'll find all the bits that's ever needed, really. There's a UFO course out, the #1 UFO course in the world, actually. We were actually selling it to MUFON investigators, so that says something, doesn't it? But that's available as well for anybody that's listening out there. And we have our own event coming up in August in the UK, which is a 3-day convention where we have international lectures coming all over. So that should be good, and we do that every year. So anybody that needs to contact me, then feel free to do so. We've publicised the first document of Project Doorway. There's 2 others which are actually completed. They're just waiting for being peer reviewed, which are going to be out on my personal website at stevemera.com once I get them returned. So I want to thank everybody for the questions tonight, because it's been some really intelligent questions, guys, and thanks for thanks for all the effort and everything that you guys are doing. It's a good show.
Hey man, yeah, we really appreciate it, Steve. Like I said, we know it's an unorthodox style, and we like to think that we're being realistic about what's going on, and that's why I like what you're doing, and I really like that. That's a boss move there. You said I wanted to bring out the information, so you just brought out all the information networks.
I'm not gonna lie.
And thanks for spending all the time you did spend with us, man. You spent a good while with us.
My favorite space.
No, thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks, guys, and do keep in touch and let me know if you want me back on sometime. We'll sort something out. Okay.
All right, thank you, Steve, and hey guys.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you guys for being here. Follow my
Thanks,
co-host,
Steve.
which is this is actually their space. I'm going to close this out right now, but check the thread, and if you're in here, somebody go in there and post the links that Steve was talking about in there, so people that listen to this can click those links, find access to all his information, all his projects, and any creators in here.
Neighbors, since Corona, when we count, we lights all the paper. Do me a favor, never do me no favors. Heard them knocking Hail Mary. Illuminati got me feeling like Tupacalypse. I would've been on top the charts, but it's politics. You do some gimmick shit and post, you get a lot of clicks. Drop some real shit and they probably won't acknowledge it.